Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
For artists that want to follow a realistic style, I don't know that you necessarily have to overthink about an influence like me or any other painter who does realism. You can certainly get a lot from the pieces that we've done, maybe even imitate some of those compositions, but I think you'll find your own way once you're just studying reality, which is what I would do. I mean, if I'm going to look at people, things, photographs, it's beneficial to start shooting your own if you can get into that. And these days, since everybody's got a camera, that's not so much of an issue anymore. Being able to study life as the basis for something is the best. I had the longest problem of thinking I needed to have everybody and every element be perfect before I could use it as a reference source. And so it took me a long time to realize how flexible the basis of the human form is. I've posed for myself on loads of paintings where now I guess I'm called out by some people online. It's a process of getting your mind comfortable with what you're building off of. And at a certain point, I would say accept that you're going to feel like you're not seeing it until you've seen it. You know, that maybe you do need to have a thing look like a thing exactly before you're painting from it.
Hi, everybody. We're back. It's time again for Word Balloon Live, the comic conversation show. John Suntress here. Happy to welcome Rich Johnston back to Word Balloon. Good to see you, Rich.
Hello.
How you been?
Very good. Very good.
Excellent.
Just got vaccinated today, so I'm top of the world.
Congratulations.
Sticker. There we go.
Very nice. Well done, sir. Absolutely. Very, very cool. Rich, I want to hit you this right away because we got two great comments on YouTube, and this might show that things are more balanced than some people think. First, Ryan Baker says, let's see here. It's really cool. It's the Fox News of comics.
We're the private eye of comics. And no
well, hold on, because there's a counter comment.
Private eye is, but that's what we are.
The counter comment is Bleeding Cool as the Young Turks of comics. So
We're
there
the
you go.
private eye of comics. And go search for Private Eye because that's here we are, Private Eye. That's who we are.
Oh, of course, Private Eye. Absolutely, man. Peter
That's
Cook's
my
wonderful
biggest influence.
publication. That's hilarious. Is it still being published, Private Eye?
It's the most successful political magazine in Britain by a long way.
I've loved hearing about Cook starting. Didn't he start it, Peter Cook?
Yeah, he did. It was his funding, and he got them through all the lawsuits and everything. So yeah, I mean he's passed now, but it's currently editor-in-chief is Ian Hislop, and it's run for profit. It makes a lot of money these days. It didn't used to. Now it does. And it doesn't quite get sued as much anymore. Most people have realised that if you sue Private Eye, you look really terrible. So they've stopped that now. It's good. I really enjoy it.
Well, and for those who aren't familiar with Private Eye, how would you answer those comments?
I think I don't watch Fox News, and I don't watch the Young Turks. I mean, it's American. It's not my influence. So I probably not either, I guess.
Well, I would imagine, and certainly predating Rupert Murdoch's influence on American culture, I'm sure. Does his conservatism? I mean, hit the UK. I mean, I'm certainly aware of various tabloid, lawsuits.
Murdoch owns the Sun and the Times. I mean, he was a huge, big media mogul in the UK long before he went over to the US, and before then in Australia. So, yeah, he has the reputation here. We've known about him for a lot longer.
Right. I still haven't seen that HBO show Succession.
Succession is really the Murdochs. Oh my word, it kind of is. I mean, they keep saying, "Oh no, it's not really the Murdochs." It is. It's written by a British guy, and he's totally basing it on the Murdochs. There's a few others in there, sure, but yeah, Brian Cox, Rupert Murdoch, absolutely.
A sci-fi show that I've only recently discovered from about 15 years ago, and I've been kind of making the rounds, seeing if other Americans have seen it yet. It's on Amazon Prime, and that's Hyperdrive, the Nick Frost show.
I remember that. Yes, only got one series, which in British views only like 6 episodes or something. So yeah, I enjoyed that. That was fun. Other people, yeah.
And it's kind of the Orville before the Orville in a lot of ways, because it's deep space.
Well, the Orville before the Orville, that's Red Dwarf.
Fair enough. Yes, you're right about that. But I did feel watching Hyperdrive and stuff. It was really its own thing in a lot of great ways.
It was fun.
I
enjoyed Hyperdrive. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a recommendation. Good. I'm glad you agree about that. All right, let's see here.
It's got Nick Frost in. There's very little that's not watchable about Nick Frost. He's
Totally agree. Yeah, he's always great. I completely agree with that. Already people are asking questions of subjects that I wanted to talk to you about.
Let's talk.
And let's hear here. Jared says, any further insights into the distribution shifts of what's going on? I talk a lot with local comic shop folks who wish that part of their world would stop spinning. No kidding. That's really... Go on. And let's talk about DC and Marvel.
It all stems down to a year ago. A year ago, when Diamond shut down distribution, it wasn't just shutting down distribution to the stores. They were also shutting down payment to the publishers. That would only lasted for like a few weeks or month, whatever.
Right, like 6 weeks, yes.
Yeah. However, at that moment, DC and Marvel go, well, what are we going to do? We need the money coming in. And that's the moment when DC started to do its plan with Midtown and DCBS. And that's the time that Marvel started to do its plan with Penguin Random House. It's just taken a little bit longer for that one to come through. But that's the moment. That was the key instigator. Everyone looked at how it affected the stores, how it affected the publishers was the big one. And we're only seeing the result of that happening now.
And am I misremembering, Rich? Wasn't Time Warner already making moves to just change things around and wasn't distributed prior to COVID?
That I don't know.
Okay. I don't know either, and that's why I haven't
had a piece from that. I mean, there were obviously they brought in some people to basically streamline the company, and so certainly the idea of moving more towards digital first was happening then. But the change of distributor, that I think only happened when Diamond shut down, and Diamond shut down to basically reorganize, restructure the entire company to basically be COVID secure, because they were not at that point. Right. Everyone was working so close to each other they couldn't. So they had to basically rebuild how the distributor worked before they could then reopen, and they didn't have the cash flow that they needed, so they had to pull payments, like you said, for like 6 weeks. But that was enough for Marvel and DC to panic. Not just about this time; it's like what happens next time was very much the thinking as well. So they needed something a bit more secure. On DC side, that meant basically creating their own distributors from 2 of their biggest biggest customers. And with Marvel, it was Penguin Random House. But again, that's a bit complicated because that's just for the comic. That's just for the kind of comics, the direct market comics, the direct market routes. They're not allowed to use Penguin Random House for the book market on the book market terms. Return because DC has a clause with Penguin Random House that says that Marvel isn't allowed to do it.
Wow,
that's like it's not exclusive. It's only a exclusion clause for Marvel. So until that comes through, that gets sorted out, Marvel will still be distributing to the bookstores in the way they currently do, which I think is Hatchet, isn't it? Yes.
Okay. You likely know more than I do as far as that goes.
There's all these weird contracts that haven't been, and also a lot of publishers who might have also been considering moving to Penguin. They can't move yet because their contracts with Diamond are still solid. I am aware, and this is here. If you want a scoop, this is because there's a story I'm working on for Bleeding Cool right now. Is that Diamond has been calling around retailers saying, when it comes to Marvel, are you going to stick with us or go to Penguin? We want to know. So already they're like gauging the market by calling around and asking. And I'm going to be hopefully writing a bit more about that on Bleeding Cool tomorrow. Once I've got a few more answers to some of the questions I've sent out.
Okay. Later in the conversation, I'm going to bring up the site. I noticed the site had a bit of a facelift. And,
it has, yeah. It's a bit of a surprise to me, but it
looks good.
It hasn't. Well, some people like it, some people hate it.
Of course they do. Of course, any change,
it all comes out in the wash. We'll see.
I understand. Here, Nerdette has been saying hi to us and also wants to know if we think we'll see any more Shazam.
Not now. Definitely not now. I honestly believe, from everyone I've talked to, that Brian was just floating up a little balloon to see what the reaction was. He wasn't going to change it, but if it had been a good reaction, then maybe we might have seen a change.
I don't know, man.
Reaction.
Yeah, I know.
With, Spidey for Miles Morales.
Well,
SPY asterisk D.
Oh, that's funny. SPY. Oh, interesting.
SPY, because he was going to be. The idea was he'd be part of the Shield kind of thing with his parents and stuff like that. So his name would be Spidey. That was one that was definitely pitched at Marvel. I know that for a fact. Some people have never forgiven him for calling Drake.
Yeah, I'm not. When he told me about Drake too, I'm like, what's with Drake? He's like, you know. And I'm like, it's his name.
Drake is the most dangerous bird, and I was thinking that's a male duck.
I had, and I love Brian, but I had the same conversation. I'm like, it's a duck, dude. I know how to break it. It's a duck, dude.
A swan can break your arm with its wing. You know, there's all sorts of stuff there. A duck. I mean, ducks are really quite nasty creatures, but that's mostly towards other ducks.
Man, he's still batting well over 800 in my book as far as his ideas. I'm so I'll put it in baseball terms. You know what I mean?
I will mock. Of course, I mock. I love Brian's comics.
No, and honestly,
I thought Cover last year was phenomenal.
Cover's amazing. Cover is, and good Lord, I was so flattered. He and David, there's that little conversation that the main character has with a fan, and it's like, yeah, I heard you on Word Balloon, and I'm like, yeah, thank you. Honestly, man,
absolutely, yes.
ridiculous, like nice little tributes that people have put in their books from a lot of friends, and Francis Manipul, Jeremy Hahn, to immediately name a couple. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I got killed off in a CSI comic book. I was the murder victim, so that has a different tinge to it. I've got the original art somewhere back there of me getting electrocuted. The kids love it.
Of course, that's fantastic. Who wrote that story?
I've tried to blank that out of my mind. I do know.
Oh, come on.
The name's gone. Wasn't Ed Brubaker? Wasn't Greg?
Was it Max? Was it Max Collins?
No. Oh, the name.
Okay.
I'm actually doing that. I'm going to have to search now because I know it's in my head and I knew it was at the time. The problem is he included so many other comic book creators in the story. I've now got that mixed up in my head. Who was it Stephen Grant? No, it was that kind of ilk.
Oh, and it could be. Yeah, no. Now that you say that, it might have been Steve. Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember.
Steve's coming up in a few weeks on Word Balloon. We're planning
a
talk.
I've got my computer down.
Oh, man, no. You do that, and I'll mention. Obviously, we're talking to Rich Johnston, the man behind Bleeding Cool, and God, what an amazing period of 20 or so years going from CBR to creating his own website, and the website is thriving and doing
Stephen
well.
Grant.
It was Stephen Grant, yeah.
It was Stephen Grant.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Henry wants to know, with what we were talking about with distribution and stuff, how long could Diamond go on without Marvel and DC?
They still have Marvel at a wholesaler discount rate from Penguin Random House.
Okay.
So they still have Marvel. They also still have DC in the UK, which remains about 10 to 15% of the market. So they've still got bits.
Sure.
But if they lose a lot of Marvel and they lose a lot of DC, Diamond will have to contract. Now, I can't see them going away, not yet anyway, but I can definitely see them contracting. And then you have to see what happens with everybody else, which makes up a much smaller part of the market. But you could still be a distributor.
Sure.
And distribute Image, Dark Horse, everybody else. However, what if they go as well?
Right.
And the question is will Diamond become the new capital city of comics?
That was my point. Absolutely, man. In fact, last night I was talking to my friend Gary, who used to run Moondog Comics and had several stores in Chicago.
Yeah, I remember.
And, and we talked about, isn't it weird? He was doing a radio show in the early 90s about nerd news. And the more things change, the more things stay the same. And again, we're looking at this new period where, from a distribution standpoint, what will happen? Also, Rich, I struggle with the monthlies being $5 and up.
Now, remember, okay, let me tell us about this. Remember, they are bigger comics.
They are.
Aside from the Joker, all those books that are much bigger, they are bigger. So you're getting more for your stuff. DC has fewer titles, but bigger titles.
Right.
And I've talked to a number of retailers who said their numbers are up.
Interesting. Go on.
People are getting like a heft. You're almost getting, with some of these books, you're almost going to getting like a graphic novel sized amount of stuff for $6. So
that's fair. That's a good way to look at it. And frankly, and talking to the creators themselves, I think they've gotten very adept at writing shorter chapters and shorter stories in some of the big anthologies. Like, I love those DC holiday specials, whether it's summer or Valentine's Day. They're great. They're fun.
And they can also be perennials. It's not stuff that's tied into the monthly grind. Shops can keep selling those. People come in, they want a Superman comic. It's so much easier to give them a Superman red and blue.
Yes.
Where it's not tied into continuity. It's done in one. You got 5 or 6 stories, and that will do nicely. So there are possibilities there. I think it's Walmart. The Walmart comics are when these kind of really started. Those short stories that were done originally for them, and they've continued now into this format. So we'll see.
It's funny. Some of Didio's choices are still, I think, there was a television executive here in the States who worked for ABC, and he greenlit 2 shows and got fired for greenlighting these 2 expensive shows, and they were Lost and Desperate Housewives, and they became massive hits. So you never know. You just never know.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Wesley has a little observation. Says, I'm buying more books with Infinite Frontier, but at some point the new will wear off. Yeah, but I like Infinite Frontier in ways that I didn't like the New 52 to pick on a change in the status quo that they went with for a while, and I'm just like, that's not Superman. I don't know what the hell you're writing right now, for example.
No, I get it.
So, I mean, I like what I'm seeing in Infinite Frontier. I think there's some interesting possibilities. And also, Future State, I mean, has really been this, like, I really didn't know what to expect. And it's like, I kind of like these. And it's much like Miles Morales. It's like, hey, keep going with some of this. This is great.
Well, they are a bit. They will be. They are continuing it a little bit. I mean, like I said, this was all what Future State was kind of Dan Didio's plan. So the fact that it's continuing, he still has got his fingers all over DC. It's just not as obvious,
right? Well, and it sounds like some things did change editorially, and definitely. Clearly they did. You and I heard the same rumors about what 5G was going to be, I'm sure, and likely you heard more.
Just told me outright. That's not. I mean, as they did with you, it's not a rumor when they said, this is what I was asked to do. This is what I'm having to change it to. It's not in any way a rumor. The one thing I would love to get a copy of that free comic book day comic that they pulped. A million copies of, or however many it was. It was like 500,000 copies. And because normally when stuff gets pulped, a few copies get out. You'll have with things like the Elseworlds 80-page giant or things like that. But
Comics Cavalcade, those were purposely made to just burn off stuff. But
but they still exist. You can find that they haven't been sold at auction. Or the Genlock 6, which was also pulped. That's made it out into eBay a few places, but no copy of the free comic book day Generation Zero thing. It was nothing. And I would love to get a copy of that, because that's meant to have the full DC timeline, which they've now kind of scrapped, in the back. And it had the original script for the story that then appeared shoved at the back of the Flash Forwards trade paperback, which had to be rewritten. So there's things like that. Those little kind of like vestigial tales of something else. I would love to see. If anyone has or can get a copy of that, please tell me. Please scan it in. I would love to see.
Now, backing into that subject a little further, the speculation market is crazy. And seriously, I'm really glad you guys are covering it as intently as you are, because Good Lord, a couple of weeks ago when you said that Wonder Woman 98, where it's the first time Wonder Woman is flying because of air currents. And it's like, really? But that's a key issue. Yes. And it's like, okay, I guess being an old fart, I'm like, all right, if you say so, you know.
That's based on nothing but fan speculation. I mean, the first appearance of Mephisto, because he was definitely behind everything in WandaVision, and went insane, and it still is. Just, you know, despite not being in WandaVision, you know, it's one of those things that I do enjoy.
It's funny. I based on what was happening, and also truly, it's my favorite Superman story from the Silver Age as far as imaginary tales. I mean, it just caught me when I was probably like 9 or 10, and it was reprinted in an 80-page giant. But I got the original issue, and it's a reader copy. I mean, I'm sure it's not worth more than $10, but it was the imaginary tale with the Super Son. Well, not the Super Sons, one Super Son and one non-powered Super Son. That's right. And I don't know if you've covered that or not on Bleeding Cool, but I'm like, when is that going to blow up with Superman and Lois, you know, aping the story?
About 5 minutes after I cover it. It does happen.
Yeah, well, that's Rich. I'll be honest. That's why I went to eBay and bought my $10 copy and waiting to see somebody put it out there. Because,
sometimes the dog wags the tail. Sometimes the tail wags the dog. So, yeah.
I understand. But, yeah, isn't this – I mean, really, I'll admit I get it as far as people buying as much as they are lately, because my weird – and I want to know what yours is if you've been doing it – I loved Hot Wheels. Actually, I loved corgi cars, and you can appreciate that being a Brit. I was a big corgi car guy. Trying to accumulate corgi cars now.
Yeah, I remember those. Yes,
they're all insanely priced. But thankfully, I guess back in the early 2000s, there were a couple companies that made new die-cast cars the size of Hot Wheels and Corgi Juniors, because Corgi Juniors are essentially slightly smaller than a regular Hot Wheel, but and I'm not even doing it from a value standpoint. I'm doing it from a nostalgia standpoint. So I bought the Blues Brothers police car and the Black Beauty from Green Hornet. And I mean, you can get a 66 Batmobile for under $20 right now. I mean, again, I'm not buying them because they're valuable. I'm really just buying them for the fun of, you know, having toys that I miss from being a kid. And I don't know if you've been buying anything, you know, crazy nerd-wise during this time we're all locked in.
Well, I did. I mean, this is the thing. I did get the Jim Lee X-Men huge big, which I don't think I would have bought otherwise.
Okay.
But you know, I've got to have some fun, and that kind of was my fun for an awful lot of times. So that was quite good.
Sure.
That was definitely a big. I generally haven't got a lot of very expensive stuff. I generally will pick up a lot of small press stuff if I'm looking for that kind of thing. But yeah, the Jim Lee XX the big thing was definitely a purchase that I'm very happy I got. And I've been enjoying an awful lot, and I wouldn't have got that otherwise if it hadn't been for all this. But that's one of the things, is that for people who are now able to still do their job and still get their income coming in, but aren't able to go out and do the kind of stuff that they used to, have suddenly found they've got more money. It's almost if you don't go out and spend it on coffees and beers and restaurants and whatever, that you get to save it. And then you get to spend it on things that are huge, and that's, I think, what's really been driving those kind of huge high value items, is that there's just more people with more money, and they can bid higher, further, faster.
I also, I'll admit, I bought a Cameo and a Fanmeo, and the Cameo I bought because the screw around show that I do with Art Baltazar and Franco, the Tiny Titans guys.
Yes.
We love Jamie Farr. Anything Jamie Farr was ever in, we're happy to talk about it. So we literally spent like nothing to get Jamie Farr to do, and he exceeded expectations because I had no idea. He's a massive comic book fan from growing up. And there's a great clip of him on an old show, kind of like Parkinson was, the Mike Douglas show, of him just gushing about how much he loves comics. And for this little cameo that we bought, he pulled up that Jules Pfeiffer collection, the comic book heroes, and a book about like an encyclopedia of comic strips and comic books from the 70s. And he's like, oh, you got the right guy. I love comic books. Because we just innocently asked. We knew that on MASH, Radar was the big comic book fan on the show as his character. And we're like, was Klinger ever a comic book fan? He's like, oh, you got the right guy. I love comic books. And he's gushing about Hawkman and the Spectre and Bullet Man. And I'm just like, there's a real comic book fan.
Yeah.
This guy isn't effing around. I'm like, come on, that's cool. So, and then the fan mail I got was of John Cleese because, God bless him, I don't know when he's going to go. And I'm like, this might be the only chance because fan mail, you got to, I know, I hate to even say that.
He's about to be dead, Python.
Well, and you'd be the first one to admit so too, because I love when he makes fun of Di, and he used to tease his mother about it, and certainly his great eulogy that he did for Graham Chapman at his funeral.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing stuff. But for $200, you could have a 3-minute conversation with John Cleese. I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Well, it's still at fan mail. So if that appeals to you, and you haven't had the opportunity to ever speak to him, because like I said, I'm like, I don't know how many more times, and especially with the pandemic and last year, I'm like, God, Jesus, please let me talk to the guy. And it was great. It was like we're doing right now, face to face. Couldn't have been sweeter. It was amazing. So yeah, I don't know. Isn't that interesting as far as a new wrinkle to the nerd culture and the online experience?
You didn't ask about his Superman comic, did you?
No, I didn't want to. However, it's funny. I might get Kim Howard Johnson.
Yeah.
Who I know ultimately did the.
Exactly.
Rich, when that whole thing was teased and finally came out, and it went from John Cleese is writing a Superman comic.
Yes.
Kim Johnson is going to write a Superman comic based on an idea from John Cleese with John Byrne. And then it was like, here's John Byrne's Superman comic. And it's like,
basically.
But that's okay. No, what I did ask him about was working with the two Ronnies, Barker and Corbett.
On the Frost Report, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And the last 1948 show, working with Tim Brooke Taylor and Marty Feldman. Because, dude, I'm a, as you know, well, as maybe you might have noticed, knowing that Peter Cook created Private Eye, I'm a British comic nerd. I mean, I really am when it comes to British comedy.
Listen, we could just talk about that because it's rare that I get to talk to Americans about that kind of stuff. But yeah, so seriously, I could, massive big fan, and some people I've got to work with, and some people I've got to meet with. And that was always great. I got to meet Michael Palin at the London Cartoon Museum a few years ago, things like that. So yeah, and I've got to work with Spike Milligan. That was a good one.
Sure. Oh my God, what a genius! Jesus.
I mean, if people don't know, he is. There's a weird thing, and I've almost got a theory, is that you get often in Britain you get breakout kind of comedy couples, and the really really talented one, if you had to choose between them, the really talented one stays here. And the slightly less talented one goes to America and becomes far more successful. So, Spike Milligan and Peter Sellers. Peter Cook, Dudley Moore.
Dudley Moore, sure.
Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie. There is a pattern there. And it's a little bit scary every time that comes up and I think, yeah, that's an interesting one. Anyway, we shall see.
Well, no, I'm going to continue about comedy for a second. And right now I'm writing a thank you to Philip Johnston, who is always like, John, you know too much trivia, and in a good way. And I'm like, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And it's my curse and my blessing. I mean, it's like it explains a lot about my lifestyle. But that said, it's crazy. And honestly, this is a subject that I have trouble with interviews I've done in the past, and I do want to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure.
Mentioning British comedy, back in 2015, I interviewed Tony Hendra, the great, and for people who don't know Tony Hendra's name, he was Ian in Spinal Tap, and, their Spinal Tap's manager, has a huge comedy history, was with the Pythons a couple years younger at Cambridge, saw the original Beyond the Fringe when it was, brand new in the UK. And I mean, really is this representation of British comedy. He died at the beginning of March. I thought about putting out his interview again, but then I read, much like Woody Allen and the controversy that won't go away, there is one about Hendra and his daughter that is very similar. And I know it's a subject of great controversy, and I have to say the least. I mean, and I'm being very gingerly about what it is, and that people can connect the dots.
They can Google.
Of course. But that's the thing, man. And at first I was like, God, that was a really great conversation, and it really was great because he was bringing back the National Lampoon brand, which was so important, just like Private Eye was, and that whole satirical movement in the 60s in the UK, in the 70s in America. Lampoon led the way, and Saturday Night Live just poached so many great performers from their radio hour and things. And oh my God, have you ever heard Tony did a John Lennon parody where he created a song that was from that Rolling Stone article where John's just shitting on the Beatles and everything. It's brilliant. But again, now it's like this guy is problematic. Well, and I struggle with problematic subjects. I have to admit.
There is that episode of the Muppet Show which they're not going to put on Disney Plus because
what's the problem with that one? I hadn't heard of. So if you don't mind.
Langham. Okay, one of the writers for the Muppet Show is Chris Langham, and a very similar story came out about him many years later. And so, even though he wrote a good chunk of the Muppet Show, there was one episode where whoever the guest star didn't turn up. They were flying in, because the Muppet Show was filmed in London. Someone was flying in, it didn't turn up, and so it's like, right, well, you're a writer, you've been on not the 9 o'clock news and a couple of things like that. Okay, you can go on the Muppet Show. You can be a guest. No one will have heard of you, but it's fine. It doesn't care. And so that's the one that's now been. All the other ones are down to music rights. There's a few that are down to music rights, but that's the one that can't be shown because, Although you
get Me Too, I honestly don't know his controversy.
You can
All right, again, I will. You're right. Actually, equal footing. There you go. Very good.
He did the first couple of series of The Thick of It, and then
that show.
Either. So
wow,
a few things like that.
Man, I'll tell you, I learned first watching Veep here in the States. Went back and watched The Thick of It, and it was great too. Watching, and why am I blanking now? Doctor Who
Peter Capaldi.
Peter Capaldi. Man, I have loved Peter Capaldi since he was a kid in Local Hero.
Local Hero, absolutely.
That great Bill. Yeah, man. Burt Lancaster and Peter Riegert, and he's very young Peter Capaldi. Yeah, Bill, the filmmaker. I can't think of his name.
I know you mean. I want to say Crabtree. It's not. The name's gone, but I know what you mean. Bill Pattinson. No.
Again, we can Google, but we were.
Yeah.
But there you go. But no, honestly, no. I've been such a fan. So yeah, I mean, and then again, this kind of backs into another subject. Go ahead. Did you have something you wanted to show?
I'm going to Google. You just said it.
Oh, okay. By all means. By the way, Kelly Jones is watching us, and thanks, Kelly, for mentioning, of course, SCTV. I'm a big fan of Canadian comedy as much as British comedy, as far as I'm concerned.
But don't knock yourselves down. You're the country that created Curb Your Enthusiasm. So,
no, it's just we take for granted. We really do. I got to see Graham Chapman doing his one-man show when I was in college, and people were asking him what are his favorite shows, and he had All American. He's like, "Oh my God, Cheers is amazing. I love Cheers." And I can't remember other ones that he met. Maybe Dick Van Dyke. I don't remember, but it was just great hearing that. And even Cleese would gush about a lot of the great comedy shows of the 50s, like Sergeant Bilko and Jack Benny and people like that.
Oh, the Phil Silvers Show. Absolutely. A classic that will stand all the time. And that is so watchable now. I can very happily watch Phil Silvers Show right now.
I feel this, it's funny. They run it at 1 a.m, my time on one of the digital
I
channels.
stay up for that. Yeah, I
do stay up for that. So, this is great. Kelly's like, Capaldi was an awesome Renfield in the BBC Dracula.
Yes, I remember that.
Oh my God, I've never seen this. I've got BritBox and Acorn, and I'm hoping maybe this production of Dracula with Louis Jourdan is on there. I don't know.
I'm just trying to think, are there any names I should throw at you so somebody you can Google yourself? Do you know the work of Harry Enfield?
No.
Ooh, going back to the 80s to now, he's a huge monster of British sketch and character comedy stuff. I mean, massive, huge, has had a whole bunch of stuff. And again, there's a double act with Paul Whitehouse. Now, Paul Whitehouse has become like an American movie actor and stuff like this, leaving Harry Enfield behind. But Harry Enfield and Paul Whitehouse, but specifically Harry, is an amazing, a juggernaut of British comedy, but never made it into the States.
It is amazing. People like that. I mean, Rowan Atkinson was able to, kind of penetrate and staying in England as he did. And I'll tell you, man, I like the Johnny English movies a lot. I have to be honest. I mean, I guess because I'm such a Bond fan, but they're fun. They're fun. You know, I mean, I wasn't a Mr. Bean guy.
Steve Coogan's never really made it out. He's been in so many American movies, but they've pretty much been terrible. And he's never made that jump. People, Catherine Tate again. I mean, she was in The Office and stuff, but she never quite made it out of the Britain. Thankfully, things like YouTube and especially TikTok now, I notice, are grabbing whole bunches of this stuff and just kind of chopping them up into little bits. And people go, "What is this show? This is very good. This is what on earth is going on here?" And
it was the Trip. I mean, I had never heard of Rob Brydon until the Trip, and now I'm a massive Rob Brydon fan.
Oh, great! Excellent.
And actually just discovered on, I think, BritBox, Cruise of the Gods.
Yes, amazing.
Really, as I described it to my American friends, and I even put it on Twitter, I'm like, think if Galaxy Quest never left the convention and stayed there, and it's a cruise, and it's a kind of a nerd sci-fi cruise, but it's great because
it's like Blake Seven or Tomorrow's People. It's that kind of
really small, a really small show.
That's a very early James Corden. So
oh my God, he looks like he's 12. It's crazy seeing that.
15. So
he really baby-faced, ridiculously baby-faced in that show. But it's very sweet, and it's a great, and it's cool because I love the Trip films that Brian.
Have you seen Marion and Jeff?
No. There you go.
That was Rob Brydon's breakout.
Okay.
It was a single voice thing. It was just him in a car, and his wife Marion has left him for this guy called Jeff.
Okay.
And he is this really sweet person taking this all in, taking everything that's happened, trying to have a positive outlook, and you can see behind his eyes he is basically all but planning to murder Jeff. It is hilarious.
All right, good to know.
And I would track that Marion and Jeff.
Marion and Jeff, or Marion and Jeff?
Marion and Jeff.
Okay, very good. Absolutely.
He is neither Marion nor Jeff.
I understand. I understand.
On that basis, Gavin and Stacey?
I know Gavin and Stacey, of course. Absolutely.
Good.
Big fan.
Good.
Truly the Trip movies, and especially when Coogan and Brydon would go on their impression jags.
Yeah.
That was a big part of my radio years, especially in sports radio, doing imitations and stuff. So anytime any celebrity would crack the code on how to do another celebrity voice, I'm like, all right, because really doing impressions is very much like singing. Is it in your vocal range? So I'm like, can I do it? So I bloody learned how to do Michael Caine. I don't do it as well as that, but I can hit a couple notes, so people kind of know what I'm doing. You know, you were kind of laugh because I'm sure that was shit.
Steve Coogan started off as an impressionist. I remember that's what his first stuff, and he did Spitting Image, which you probably if he did quite a lot of the voices.
Tony Hendra, back to Tony Hendra again,
and Harry Enfield mentioned previously. He was also a voice in Spitting Image, but anyway, it all ties in.
It's funny. Yeah, no, and again, and that's why truly, God, you know what I love is Alexi Sales.
Yes.
Seeing him on The Young Ones, somebody put like 3 hours of that show stuff that he had.
Alexi Sales stuff. Yeah, well, he writes short stories now. His collections of short stories that are fantastic.
Wow.
He does a radio show.
Wow.
Sales Sandwich Shop, I think it is, which is basically his stand-up in a weird kind of fictional sandwich shop, and he's just shouting at his customers. That is, by the way, here's something for you. Do you use the Radio 4 iPlayer?
I absolutely do. Yes, I we can't get it. We can't download stuff, but what we can do is play it. And I'll admit it, I record it.
You can find it. You can find the. You should, but in the States, you should be able to find the shows by searching.
Okay.
And be able to play them. And there's a few things there. The skewer is something which is comedy genius. It's just taking the week's news, chopping it up into news little, and just rearranging it, and it's very, very good by a guy called John Holmes. I would recommend that to all and sundry. There's a sitcom called Cabin Pressure, which I argue is the best sitcom ever written and created by a guy called John Finnemore. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch,
fantastic,
and Roger Allam and other people, Stephanie Cole, and it's the best written sitcom I know. It's called Cabin Pressure.
Very cool.
And you get to go and search that one out.
Oh, I guarantee you, Rich. I'll be going back and listening to this and making notes of everything we're discussing. And I promise you, no,
Do you
absolutely.
want to talk about comics? I just realized.
Oh, no, we'll get back to comics. No, Rich, I think, and again, I know you've heard and watched Word Balloon. You know how the show goes, and I love tangents are always welcome. I think. Well, when we do get back to live events, I hope that when people meet you, they might also be British comedy fans, and it will inspire new conversations and give them an in to speak to you beyond. You know what I don't like about your website?
I am gambling a stamp, and I have booked flights to San Diego for Thanksgiving.
Really? Well, I guess because you see, obviously that's such an American holiday, so it's another Thursday.
I've never been to America for Thanksgiving, so I've no idea who's going to go to the show. I've no idea what it's going to be like. I've been invited to some Thanksgiving dinners by people, which is very, very kind.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic. Good.
But I have no idea. The show may even be cancelled, in which case I'll be spending a week in San Diego with no purpose. But I'll do it because, because direct flights from London to San Diego are about a fifth of the price they usually were. Usually you have to pay about £1,400, £1,500, and now they're like £350. And that's, for me, that's like, oh, well, I'll do that. So I'm coming.
Have you already, and I would imagine you've got points as far as hotels and stuff like that.
I've booked my Airbnb already. So,
fantastic. There you go.
Awesome. Again, the Airbnb for the week, for a week, is the price that the Hyatt used to charge for a day. So, again, it's cheap. I'm coming. Whether you want me or not,
I understand, and it's funny. I was so like, I'm not gonna go. Are you nuts? But knowing that stuff, that's a good point. And truly, the first show back that I'm flirting with, if everything works out, is in August, and it's Mitch Halleck's show, Terrificon, in Connecticut, and it's a great venue. It's a great and I don't mean to denigrate this, but Mitch himself would admit. It's not one of the big shows, but it's a nice second tier show. And he gets a lot of great creators and he gets a lot of great celebrities under normal circumstances. And I've been moderating panels for him and even helping him program a bit in the last few years. So it's always fun. And it's at one of the Native American casinos. Yeah. And it's a really nice East Coast casino, very Vegas-esque, but also just a great resort. And I'm just like, that's always nice. I might do that. So I'm debating, but that was something else. I was wondering, will that be your first convention?
No. So tell me before that. It's Thought Bubble in the UK.
Okay, and I was wondering.
American guests and people coming by, so that's in Harrogate in the UK, and that's a strong. It's certainly the biggest comics focused convention in Britain. Certainly, you'll get more comics stuff at Thought Bubble than anywhere else, and I'll definitely be going to that. There's the MCM in London, which is still in October, and I don't know if that'll work. We'll see. And then there's the London Film and Comic Con. And people aren't really talking about that because that's a little bit too early. I think it's either late June or early July, and people are going, I'm not entirely sure about that. So we will see who they get for that. But the thing about that is that's the show that I can cycle to. It's close enough for me to just get on the bike and cycle on there. So if I can do that, then maybe. But
I understand C2E2. It's not quite a bike ride, but it is close enough that it's 20 minutes away, and I'm in the city, so it's fine. And also being in December, I hope that things will be fine.
Yeah, London Film and Comic Con, 23rd of July. So we will see.
I get well.
I bought a few theatre tickets. Between then, I'm going to see Thomas Stoppard's new play, Leopoldstadt, in July, and I'm seeing the new Mischief Theatre production with Penn and Teller in November as well, between Thought Bubble and San Diego. So I'm really kind of pushing it all together. I've gone for it. Gone bold.
No, man, and again, I'm sure the parts of the world where the vaccine is happening and stuff. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if we need a booster shot 6 months after getting our doses.
Or even a year. I think it's very possible. Look, I get my flu shot once a year, and I haven't had flu since I've started taking it. So
there you go.
It shouldn't be that hard to do both at the same time.
No, and thank God, honestly, we're very fortunate that they were able to come up with the vaccine as quickly as they did. I wish they had also put the same effort in coming up with a test that you could take at home, much like a pregnancy test. See, you guys have them. No.
Oh, we have.
Yeah, because we had brilliant leadership that said, "Hey, every state you're on your own." Not to get political, but too late.
No, well, we've kind of got the NHS, and that's just like everyone, and they've just basically a whole bunch of home tests that you can take. Especially it's for kids because we got the kids back in school, and because of that, they have to get test. They have to test themselves every twice a week, and we can also test ourselves, and so they just keep piling. So we've got several home test kits downstairs that we can use before they start to go back. And we can keep testing ourselves just to make sure. So
understood. Old School says they just announced that a booster in 12 months is likely. Makes sense.
Right. I expect that will be the case. That feels about right.
Yeah, and Chris Conley points out, and I'll tell you, he's right. Good Lord, is it a 10-hour flight from the UK to San Diego direct?
Yeah, but the 11. But that's, okay. Indirect. Okay, flying is adds about 5 hours onto it. So no, I happily take an 11-hour flight over a 13, 14, 15-hour flight where I have to hang around. Okay, I'm not going to name anywhere that I might insult, but hang on somewhere else in America for 2.5 hours or 3 hours waiting for luggage to be transferred. And no, I'd much rather just sit there and have a nice big sleep.
I hear you, man. I can sleep on a plane as well. It doesn't bother me. It's funny. I haven't gone to Europe since literally it's been 21 years, 2000, the year of the presidential election between George Bush and Al Gore. Literally the weekend before election day, we were in Amsterdam.
Well,
and it was fascinating.
The prices are quite good. When you're all properly jabbed and you're feeling confident and they let you come in, I think the USA is on the green list for coming into the UK, so it should be okay.
Oh, okay.
Come over because
I will.
The hotels are cheap and the flights in are cheap, and if you can make sure it all looks good, pop over.
I'd love to do Thought Bubble at some point. I'd love to do Luca at some point. The Irish guys that put on, I can't remember if it's Dice or the other show. What's the other show? If it's not Dice.
There is Dice. There's a Dublin Con.
It's either Dublin Con or Dice, and forgive me, Owen, who likely might be watching. I forget which one he's behind, but he's like, we were in this was pre-COVID. He's like, we'd love to have you. I'm like, I'm not going to pass up a chance to go to Ireland.
Absolutely.
Good Lord, beautiful country, man. Absolutely. So, but yeah, all right, here's another comic subject to bring up. NFTs. Honestly, isn't this crazy?
Yes, but that's just the first few. It's become a really weird novelty, and everyone's diving in, and that's going to bring the prices down. And if you can, and there are a lot of movements to making them not be the gas guzzlers, which some have been so far. If you know what I mean, or the electricity guzzlers. As a concept, the idea that basically a comic book artist can sell their digital artwork in the same way that they can sell their
physical artwork.
I'm okay with that. However, you have to deal with a lot of other issues first. And I don't think they're entirely. Now, there is the idea that it's just bringing capitalism and just the dollar in. Yeah, but that already happens with original artwork. Right. And this is just an example of that. Now, there's all sorts of copyright issues involved as well because people seem to make NFTs of anything without any consideration. And that's going to be an issue as well. You could make an NFT of this podcast. And that's what it will be. And someone could sell it for $8,000 and you don't see a cent of that. So there are a few issues like that as well. So,
yeah.
I mean, in principle, I'm okay with it. It's just that the impact and effect it could have could be quite devastating for all sorts of people. But hey, we're doing this now. How much energy is this using when it gets spread out around the millions of viewers? Clearly, who'll be tuning in. So there are aspects there as well. It was all the complaints about NFTs on Twitter, and then it was Jonah Wyland who said something like, "Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but do you know how much Twitter uses? How much a single tweet uses?" So there are other issues as well.
No, I get it.
I'm okay. The madness of the prices, that is a very temporary thing. Eventually, it's going to be like original artwork. Although, again, it's the idea is that all money is an illusion anyway. So the idea that you've got a digital note that says you own this digital piece of artwork, which anyone can copy and send to anybody else in its exact same form, it's no more ludicrous than a, I don't know, $10 note or whatever. What it actually means, what it actually represents.
Well, but again, thankfully, globally, we are under the illusion that paper money has value.
We are.
And we're all in this shared agreement.
It's a very useful illusion.
Yes.
Which we all pretend to go along with because it makes a few things work and tick away and brings cohesion. So it's basically like it's a bit like when Mark Miller is doing a promotion for any of his comic books, and he comes up with stuff and he whips it all up, people start believing it, and then sometimes they become true. I'm talking about the Wanted movie, which wasn't true when he first started promoting it. But by the time he finished promoting it, suddenly it was true because the people go, hang on, what is this Wanted movie everyone's talking about? Why didn't we get it? Oh, we can get it. Oh, well, let's get it then, since everyone's talking about it.
Well, and the brilliance of casting Eminem and J.G. or Gene Hackman, J.G. Jones,
Absolutely.
Of course, the artist, and Halle Berry.
And then saying that Eminem was going to play him as well, and then having to have Universal representing Eminem saying he isn't doing it, but that's how Universal got into making the movie. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. No,
I mean, I have to say, all power to the man. He manages to manipulate media more than anyone else. No, he doesn't need to do it anymore because he doesn't own any of it anymore. It's on Netflix, and they've got proper PR people now, so it's fine.
Well, that's true, but also, he thankfully working with Netflix and being behind all of his properties and stuff. I'm so happy for him. You've known him longer than I have, but I've known
Kick-Ass, real Kick-Ass movie that he created about someone who looked like Kick-Ass fighting people in the street, and that went out there. Oh, there was the faked image of Obama holding a copy of Supreme, the faked Nemesis adverts on Times Square, all this kind of stuff, or the faked Hollywood actors who are going to be in Starlight, things like that. And it was all absolute nonsense, but all sorts of people ran the stories, and enough of them were believed, and they ended up some of them becoming true. And that all power to him.
He knows how to play the hype machine. Absolutely. And truly, it was really fun having, and I'm sure I wasn't, and please folks, because I'm sure I've mentioned this in recent episodes when I talk about what Mark's doing and streaming and everything. I the few times he would come over to the US and would get a chance to talk, and I'm like, Mark, you got to get in the streaming business, man. I'm like, the movies are great, but I'm like, this canvas of having 10 episodes to tell a story. I'm like, oh God, this is perfect for what you do. And he's like, I don't like TV, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, boom, the Netflix thing happens and his ship comes in. And it's like, that's awesome.
All down to you, sir. All down to you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I'm the one who put the seed in his head. Absolutely. Please. But it was just like, I didn't understand. I'm like, you got to explain to me why you seem resistant to streamers. And maybe he wasn't and was just doing it the whole time. Probably.
I mean, it's when you want to compare things, it's pretty much he got paid for Millarworld by Netflix about the same amount. I think it's almost about the exact same amount of money that Jack Kirby's estate settled with Disney for. It's called he got a Kirby. I almost wonder if he did it deliberately. It was almost like, no, I'm not going to keep putting the money up until it's the same amount that Jack Kirby got paid, and I'll take that. So
It's brilliant. I'm happy for him. I can't wait for this stuff starting next month.
It looks amazing.
It absolutely does. I agree with you on that. And with the idea of streamers, and also how comfortable we've gotten in the last year watching things at home versus going to a theaters. How do you think that's going to? I mean, we're all wondering how that's going to affect budgets moving forward.
People are going to want to go back to the cinema. There's going to be quite an outpouring of people who you haven't been to the cinema. Maybe you went once, twice a year even. But you haven't been for over a year, and now maybe you want to. And of course, they're going to ram them. Have you seen the schedules? It's like, how many sci-fi geeky films can you put out over the next 3 years? Well, they're putting as many as they can. All the ones that haven't run for an entire year or more, shoved in together. So it's going to be insane. You'll never have had so many comic book-based movies and similar types of stuff happening in the same year as you're going to get in end of 2021 and into 2022, and it's going to look crazy because they've kept making them. They just haven't put them out yet.
Well, they were. I mean, things were in the pipeline, obviously, and in post-production when the pandemic hit. And obviously, God, I cannot believe, and I'm thrilled that they are waiting. Well, actually, I think I'm half and half because I wouldn't have minded seeing the next James Bond streaming versus being in the theater. I have to admit, that's the other thing, Rich, because this is the other persistent conversation. Event movies like the Marvel movies and other sci-fi things will continue to be made. And people will want to see them on big screens. But that disappearance of the mid-size movie, and some of it does survive now in streaming, but it is interesting. And my great example, a comic book related property, one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to talking again to Stephen Grant soon is Two Guns. Because 30 years ago, Two Guns would have been a summertime hit.
I get that. I hear that. Absolutely.
Buddy cop movie, Denzel and Mark Wahlberg, for people who may not remember, but I'm betting if you're watching Word Balloon, you likely do. And that thing really didn't find its audience until cable, and DVDs.
Here's one, The Kingsman. We were mentioning Mark Miller, and that was weird because after the pandemic hit, kind of stuff, but not everything had quite closed down. I went to an exhibition for The Kingsman, using loads of props and stuff that they had in a war museum in Chelsea, and they had lots of little cards talking about the film as if it had been released, because at that point it hadn't been released,
right?
And so there's probably a hell of a lot of spoilers in those kind of cards kind of stuff. So clearly I haven't put those on the internet yet, but for a good 3 weeks this exhibition without a purpose just kind of was there. It was like, hey, this is a piece about a film that you can't see, and now you won't be able to see for at least a year or two. But hey, we've got the costumes.
So they did kick the release down the road, the release date for Kingsman as well.
I mean, it's already been kicked. Nothing to do with the pandemic. It's already been kicked down the road already, and then it just kept going further. So that's a film that was basically made 2-3 years ago. Still hasn't been put out there yet.
That's interesting, and I wonder if that's what's that. And it'll be big.
When they do promotion for it, it's long enough of a time that you'll be able to see that some of the actors have aged. You'll actually be able to see a few more wrinkles, a few more lines.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, Colin Firth and the like, sure. If he's in it, is he in it?
No, he's not. It's The Kingsman is set. It's a prequel.
Yes.
Set,
is it Ray Fiennes?
Decades previously, like World War I, that kind of thing, open before. So it's got the idea of when the Kingsman thing was set up.
Right, first established. Is Ray Fiennes? I haven't heard of a name actor that's attached to it. I don't know if there is a name actor.
Yeah,
was it Ray Fiennes?
Sure, I'll do some Googling for you as well. But yeah, I think so, yes.
No, it's all right.
But hey, I've seen all the costumes. I've seen the props, all that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
A year ago. So
interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen the one with oh God bless it.
Elton John?
No, the one with the two women. Oh God bless it. One's from Chicago. Melissa McCarthy and that's the Netflix Force. Yes, the Netflix superhero movie.
But it's on my list of things to watch. So
me too, man. Oh no, I can't keep up. In fact, we're talking the night before the next Falcon and Winter Soldier comes out. I still have to watch last week's. Invincible.
I haven't watched any of them. I'm waiting to see them all in one go with my youngest daughter, who's very excited.
Oh, that's great.
So far, and no one posts anything in the comments. I have not yet been spoiled on it either, so I'm very careful on that. But we will see. So no one, don't say anything, okay? People posting up comments, no.
What did you watch the Snyder Cut?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
I enjoyed it very much. I mean, it's a bit long, a little bit long, but out in the home you can stop. And they did all those little chapter things. Those chapter things were very handy for stopping. And clearly, it's a better film than the one that went out there. But also,
100%, absolutely.
Also, it's 4 hours long, so you get more chance to do stuff. And if you can treat it as a series, so obviously it's going to be a bit better because you didn't have to cut all the stuff out.
I agree, and go on.
I'm just thinking now, what's the lesson for other people? Is are we going to have more 4-hour superhero movies? Yeah, probably. Will they do as well? I have no idea, but we'll see.
Well, that's why I am curious to see what happens next. And I agree with you. It was easy to put down, which is great for streaming, but not so great if you're locked in the theater. I remember.
See, I reckon there's a case for putting out part 1 and part 2 of a film at the same time, or a week apart.
Oh, sure.
And have them run simultaneously. I've been to plays.
But again, that's part 1 and part 2. I mean, it's not. I was going to use, and in fact, I back in the '90s, remember when Kenneth Branagh made Hamlet and had his 4-hour Hamlet. Well, we had it. Thank God we had an intermission because I really needed to pee. So I do remember that. But yeah, I don't know, man. Again,
but there are plays. It was still running, when everything happened. But Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is 2 plays, and you go and see one play, and then at some point, at a time of your choosing, you go and see the second play.
That's the thing, though, man.
It could be the same day. It could be weeks apart. And I'd do that if I was a film, because it's always got to be about it's about as cheap to release 2 movies as it is to release one when you're advertising just the same thing. I do that.
I hear you on that standpoint, but what I think when you're dealing with each individual film, I heard a filmmaker give an interview this week and made this point that when it's in a theater and it's final cut and you're just sitting there watching it for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever, the filmmaker has made the choices of how the film is paced.
Yes.
When you are able to stop it at home, go to the bathroom, maybe grab a sandwich, go to bed, and continuing watching it the next day. Now the viewer is controlling the pace, and how does that affect the storytelling? And knowing that
maybe makes it a bit more like a comic book.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, man. No, and fine, we're used to it. It's very interesting, and also, I mean, these generations younger than us, as I sit here on my old man stool yelling at clouds. The fact that attention spans have diminished, and I think that's really interesting. And like you said, the success of TikTok and some of these other small bite kind of content things. I don't know how the younger generation do they sit still. I mean, they're also binge watching at the same time, but I do find it fascinating and a big change on how we consume content.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah,
no, honestly, I don't either.
Yeah, so, but it's I mean, well, yeah, but honestly, Rich, this is where I think you and I are very much alike, where we're kind of ringside for all this shit that's happening, and it's fascinating. And having done it, I mean, when did you start reporting on the nerd world?
Well, next year will be, oh my word, my 30th year.
Sure.
Reporting digitally about comic books. Apparently, I'm the oldest serving digital online reporter for anything in the world. So I've been told. There's no one who's been doing it longer than me. Harry Knowles started after me.
There you go.
No other journalist, or well, not a journalist, no other reporter has been doing it for that long. So, yeah.
No, well, and that's why, dude, believe me.
Next year's my 30th anniversary, so I have to do something for that.
See, and I've been doing it half the time that you have, and that's my attitude when I hear someone go, I've been doing podcasts for a really long time, since 2015. I'm like, yeah, take a walk. Goodbye. I don't even want to hear about you. I'm like, I started in 2005, which, again, that's happy 15th anniversary, Rich Johnson. I get it.
1992, I went to university and discovered this thing called the internet. And these days, there were no websites. It was all fields of just message boards.
Message boards, absolutely. So yeah, man.
No, I'm with you. Eckhart's Comics Misc in those little white letters on a black screen. Yeah.
Hilarious. Absolutely. No, I get it, man. What else? I'm going to, something I'm going to show everybody the front page right now at Bleeding Cool. And
I have no idea what the front page looks like right now. I've been talking for you so long, it could have all have changed by the time I saw it.
Well, Rich, honestly, what is your work schedule like? I mean, how I would imagine. That's not good.
I wake up, I start working, at some point I lose consciousness, and then drag myself to bed.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ooh. Okay, you froze for me for a second. Excuse me. Continue.
I basically start work in the morning. After I'm having breakfast for the kids, and then at some point I will collapse in a puddle and drag myself to bed in the wee hours of the morning. But generally, I'm pretty solid through the day, and there's so much stuff that goes on behind the bonnet as well. But again, I'm just a writer. I'm a head writer of Bleeding Cool. There are other writers, other head writers, and there's the editor-in-chief, and there's the bosses as well. So there's all sorts of people doing stuff and writing stuff. And do you know what? I'm going to look myself because I have no idea what's on there right now. But there has been, as you say, there has been a change in the way it looks, and it's still being tweaked. I understand there's still things.
Okay.
It should hopefully, for most people, be a lot faster. It should be very, very speedy. And so things have moved away. If you're just looking for the comic book stuff, which is a bit harder to find, I imagine it is, then they've done it. They made Latest in Comics Live. So that Latest in Comics thing there, that wasn't before, but now it is. So you can click on that and you'll just get comics. And so if that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to get. So there's some stuff there. Oh yeah, the X-Men by Jonathan Hickman omnibus we put up there because we found that on the Hatchet site, I think. Dark Horse just recalled the comic, one of their comics. It's suddenly jumped to $30 on eBay because people are mad. But that's the way. If you're looking for comics, click on the Latest in Comics, and you'll go to get basically just comic book content. And if you're looking for the latest in TV and film and games, you can do that as well. Also, vintage paper. Vintage paper now has a category. I haven't actually seen that myself. I'll have to look that up later. It's not working. Right. I'll have to talk to some people about that. But it's still there's a few little teething troubles, I think. But generally I think they're going for a cleaner look, faster. That should be, because Bleeding Cool, the previous version of the website was quite slow in loading. This should be a bit speedier, and that's important to all sorts of people.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, half of people hate it and half people love it, and that's usually the way. Every single time we go through one of these things, I'll get told by people how awful it is, how terrible it is. I haven't got anything to do with it, but I get told it anyway. And then the next time we change it, the same people will tell me how awful it is and how terrible it is. Why can't you go back to the old version? The old version that you hated. Yeah, that one. Let's go back to that. So, well,
Mark LaFerrier from Canada says, bring back the line in the gutters, red, green, and yellow.
Maybe. I bring them back occasionally. I like to bring them, there's a little bit of a, if there's a specific reason. But I kind of felt it was really quite restricting from the CBR days. It was, because often I didn't know. Sometimes
was that an agreement with Jonah that you would have to do that?
No. I see. Originally doing it, I think it probably was a Jonah thing. Yeah. Not that I thought it was a good idea. But after time, they didn't really work as well with some of the stories I was doing. So I had to, when we did Bleeding Cool, it didn't really fit with the stories we were doing. And hopefully I try to explain in the story how reliable this is, where this is coming from. This is official. This is something I've heard, how reliable the person who's told me this is. Or sometimes, this can be absolute nonsense, but it's a fun story, isn't it? So occasionally I'll go into those kind of, but hopefully I should, rather than actually having the traffic lights up there, it should just say whether it's good or not. Something like that.
Ever since, and truly, this is why, one of the reasons why I still prefer going to Bleeding Cool than some of the other news sites. We mentioned Jonah Weiland, the original man who created Comic Book Resources, and my buddies Mike Dorn and Matt Brady with Newsarama. It's not the same since those guys left, and they've been taking. I mean, no disrespect to guys like Chris Arant, who does, I think, excellent work.
Absolutely.
Gage Radar.
Absolutely.
Yes, I mean that's the thing. So there are great modern people today, but it concerns me that we get many more top 5 lists and clickbait kind of stories rather than just.
I agree.
Here's a nice long interview piece. Honestly, one of the inspirations of Word Balloon were a couple audio interviews that Jonah did with people like Rucka and Mike Mignola and people like that, and I'm like, I can do that. I'm going to start doing that. So. I mean, it's too bad I miss those guys. When I see them, I saw Jonah. Well, obviously it's pre-COVID, but when he was kind of traveling the country after he, was bought out and everything. And Mike, I've managed to have a couple of recent conversations, and Matt, for that matter. Yeah, so that's the thing, man. There, as you say, you're the guy who's had the longest tenure. But thankfully, you've been able to control your destiny. And again, that's something
this kind of works. I mean, this is it. I'm doing a job that didn't exist when I was a kid, wondering what I'd do when I grew up. And it's now become a career. I've brought up a family in London, which is not cheap thing to do. So yeah, I've managed to keep that going, and I'm very, very grateful to all the opportunities that have they've been handed to me, and hopefully we'll keep going. I've always kind of thought that Bleeding Cool has about a year left in it before it all kind of closes and collapses, but I've thought that for 12 years now. So maybe now I'm thinking maybe there's about a year and a half left. I've increased my optimism.
I understand. Well, I mean, yeah, I have a feeling there's a bit of a tongue in cheek in there, but that's all right. I mean, but also
this idea, maybe it's my inner pessimism that it'll all collapse at some point in the near future. I really need to start looking out, and I haven't.
Well, it's funny because I think there's more freedom and effort by big companies to do what both of us do, and I think they don't have. There's something, at least from my perception as a consumer, there is something missing when it's corporately done, and really including the streamers and the after shows that we now have of popular cable and streaming shows.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, yeah. So and again, everyone forgive me because I always say I'm a journalist with a small J. I'm not.
I say I'm not a journalist.
Well, there you go. Absolutely. And I say I'm like kind of I'm an entertainment host. You're an entertainment writer. How would you describe yourself?
I'm a reporter.
Okay.
Journalism is a profession. The qualifications.
Well,
that kind of stuff. I'm a reporter. Yeah. I'm a hack. I'm a reporter. I'm like a plumber. It's that kind of thing, you know. I've learned on the job. I've
described myself as a plumber as far as my audio abilities, production wise, versus a guy that can cut an album with, real wonderful talents and stuff. I'm like, hey man, I'll say I'm a locksmith as opposed to a safe crasher.
I'm a tabloid reporter, and I'm fine with that.
Well, and honestly, Rich, that's the thing. I do believe, and in fact, Mark has a question kind of in that same realm. Because I understand some people's criticism of Bleeding Cool and how you handle stories, but I also know that there's a philosophical way of reporting in the UK that, at least again, maybe I'm full of shit, but it seems slightly different than the United States.
So.
Okay, well, here's Mark's question, and it regards the Whedon thing, and he's like, how do you feel? Do you feel justified when you guys broke something like Whedon being a fake feminist and is crapped on now?
I don't think we broke that, but Jude Terra did push that quite strongly and everything, and I think that's fair enough. No, look, that'll always happen. There's so many stories that will run, and people will poo-poo to the skies. And that always happens, and then 3 months later, when it's officially announced, or 4 months, or sometimes at least 2.5 years at one point. Yeah, okay, no one will say, yeah, but that Bleeding Cool was saying this 2.5 years ago. That never happens. And you know what? That's okay. I'm all right with that.
Sure. No, I understand.
I'm aware it happens, and I acknowledge it, and occasionally we'll talk about it. We do a little thing called Told Ya, which we'll put that little Told Ya headline, this happened. But yeah, that happens a lot. But, regular readers, they know. They've seen it.
There you go.
And it kind of keeps them loyal because, all right, here's the one Bleeding Cool thing that we do that I think really works is, unlike most other reporting websites, not all, but most, we don't fit into the PR cycle. So we're not just, we still use things, but we're not just reporting PR. We're just working with companies' PR departments on every story. And as a result, we get to run stories other people don't. Someone the other day was having a go at Bleeding Cool for breaking in an embargo on a story. And I was like, we didn't have an embargo. No one embargoed us. We just ran the story. Yeah, but we had the embargo, and you should have respected it. We didn't know about the embargo.
No. Yeah.
Why do you think you're more morally superior for going along with PR companies, departments, whereas we just want the story that people want to read? I'm much happier doing that. I'm much happier not breaking embargo. I'm much happier not having those embargoes. And if we were in bed with Marvel, DC, to the extent that some people are, we would have to. Now, I don't break embargoes. I have occasionally, every now and then I will be embargoed on something. That does happen. But I'll choose that. It's not a matter of course. And generally, I'd rather not be. I'd rather be fine not getting the interviews, fine not getting the previews, fine not getting that access, if I could actually just write the story that people want to know. So, clearly I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about that. But that's, I think, the real thing is we try and run stories that you won't see elsewhere because nobody else is allowed to run them.
Well, I want to stay on this subject because truly it's something that I wouldn't say wrestle with, because I feel I walk a tightrope with embargoes, because on the one hand, my big thing is, and this is where you and I are different, and this is not a you and I disagree. I love difference as well. And in fact, I think that makes our content unique and people can enjoy what we do. But I am okay. I always say to the people I know in comic publishing, once again, full disclosure, I'm like, I'm not here to mess up your marketing thing. So if you accidentally teased a book and something like, oh, you know something, shit, John, I shouldn't have mentioned that. They want me to hold off and not talk about it. Do you mind cutting that part out? I'm like, it's fucking comic books. I have no problem with that. It's not like you're keeping the cure for cancer from the public. And again, this is our difference, and I respect that. And it's like, it's not a big deal. By the same token, as you just said, I wouldn't call myself an outlier or yourself, but that I'm independent enough that if I disagree or just want to cover something, I want to have an unfettered conversation about a subject. And again, I don't want to get anybody in trouble because I know they're working. I come from, as you did, and I don't know your relationship with Avatar, who obviously
they own me. Well, they own me. I would
okay.
I'm a directly employee of Avatar Press.
Hey man, and I've worked for my last job was with CBS for 4 years, and they're like, we would rather you don't do X, Y, and Z because you work for us, having nothing to do with Word Balloon, but just in terms of online behavior. And I'm like, hey, my
Avatar don't tell me anything. They tell me so little. I discover Avatar projects that exist when I read them in previews. It's kind of like, shouldn't you have told me this? Shouldn't you have told me about this? Oh, I don't know. Just get on with it, Richard. Stop bothering us. So honestly, it's so hands off. It's insane. And I've had these conversations. What do I do when if this story comes out about you, fictitious stuff, and they say, oh, well, obviously you need to run it. So okay, fine. But so I've never really had that. It's never come up really.
Do certain Marvel and DC stories? Do you still ever go to them and say, I'm hearing this?
I will generally look for comments.
But I'm saying prior to
extra context, or if they want to give me extra information, I will do that all the time. DC very rarely responds. Marvel about half the time. Respond.
Okay, and I understand that's it. Hey man, again, it's.
I'm going to run the story.
Okay, regardless. Well, it's funny, Rich, and you may not remember, but there have been a couple hot stories that I'm like, I was looking for verification, and I contacted you, and you're like, run it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm an American reporter. I need three sources before I'm like,
I need a good source. But yeah, I'm okay with a good
source. Good source, sure. Yeah.
If a chief creative officer or editor in chief or something, I find something that, and then okay. I mean, it depends. But if it's a good source, I'll take it. But there was some of the good sources I remember from the back of my day. People who worked at Marvel and DC, sometimes in the accounts department or in like legal affairs, and they were big comic book fans, and they really liked the stuff. And I get the emails and we're kind of like, oh, that's a really big story. Are you okay with me? Yeah, we need to get this out there. Marvel marketing are terrible. People need to know about this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll take that. So I've worked for basically kind of like people involved in the comics who are basically frustrated by their own marketing departments who won't tell people about their stuff. So that happens. Used to be a bit more than it does now, but there was a time. Do you remember Felicia, who used to post the Bendis boards? And we got all sorts of stuff about the Bill Jemas days back then, and that was totally genuine. I knew exactly what that was. I targeted, and everything that was coming through was just the most golden stuff.
Or so Marvel Boy.
Now they cop to it all, but at the time it's like, oh no, this is terrible.
Right, Marvel. I remember the whole Marvel Boy Secret Invasion kerfuffle And oh man, the amount of calls I got from creatives and publishing people, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. What I'm like, whatever you guys are comfortable talking about, I'm fine with it. I don't need, I never need to be first. It's nice when it happens. And it's God, Rich, last week or 2 weeks ago, I had Joe Henderson on, and he's spewing Lucifer Easter eggs of what's coming up next month. And I was like literally writing, like, all right, I got to put this in a press release, and I'm slow as hell doing that stuff. And you guys had it, and Sci-Fi Wire had it, and Screen Rant had it, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. Everybody's listening. Thank you. That's good. So, yeah, no, it's great. I mean, when it happens, that's cool. But no, it's interesting hearing the reasoning why behind the story. Or the other thing is, now with streaming and also everyone being, I always say the best and worst thing, and believe me, we'll wrap up soon because I know I'm keeping you awake. I apologize.
That's right. It's only half 10. I'm just worried about the battery of my iPad is down to 4%. Okay. So we'll keep going. I can switch devices, but let's go.
I was going to say some of the fan coverage now, on the one hand, I'm glad they do it. But man, I'll tell you, some of these YouTubers that have fan shows are very entitled and they don't understand. And we're so insulted when Disney didn't invite them to the Galaxy's Edge premiere. Get over yourself, man.
I consider whenever I get an invite, and I do occasionally get invites to things, I always consider it an honor. I never, ever expect to get anything. I've been to all sorts of like premieres and things like that, and some of them have been amazing, and others have got pass me by, don't get an invite. That's fine. I have no problem with that at all. It was Thor 2 when I jumped the barrier with the red carpet barrier with a copy of the next day's issue of Young Avengers that featured the new look for Loki, and I jumped over that, dodged a couple of Disney security guards, shoved it in Tom Hiddleston's face, and said, "I've got the new look for Loki. Do you want to see it?" And he goes, "Yeah." He's a big comic book fan. "Can I take a photo of it?" "Yeah." Posted, went up on Bleeding Cool, went up on Tumblr. It broke Tumblr with like Tom Hiddleston holding a copy of the next day's Young Avengers with the new look of Loki. That was a day on the site. I remember that. That was quite fun. But yeah, so so I'm still surprised they invite me back to these things after me doing stuff like that. So yeah, I'll take it when it comes.
I hear you, man.
There's going to be more of these things more than ever this year and next year. They're going to want some kind of publicity. I'm happy to play along.
There you go. No, I understand.
I can still do all my weird stuff.
That's again, that's again, I understand the appeal. I've been reading your stuff since Lying in the Gutters, and I've come to know.
Remember the one I did with it was Lying in the Gutters when I went to the Iron Man premiere with an iron.
That's hilarious. I didn't remember that.
I basically started interviewing people holding an iron, and that was quite entertaining. There's a great photo of me somewhere with me basically holding an iron in Gwyneth Paltrow's face. I do recall, but it was great. Matt Berry, about a decade before he did What We Do in the Shadows, or longer, him there holding the iron like a phone, kind of stuff. It was a great evening. But I can always look back at those photos and think, what was I thinking?
Well, you're having fun, man. That's all right.
I bought a Steve Ryan on my way to the premiere, thinking it would be a great gag. And it kind of was.
That's excellent, man. Are there more comics in your future? You've written comics here and there.
I've written a fair few. There's a few bits and pieces that I'm looking at. I'm not sure if they'll go anywhere because I have to either write or draw them a bit more than I have been. But there's a few little scripts and things with people. We'll see. It comes up every now and then. I still do cartoons for political cartoons every Monday for a British political website called Guido Fawkes, and they're read by huge amounts of people. So we might be putting a collection of those together. So
hey, that's great. Fun. That's amazing. Are you? Are they aware of your, other job with Bleeding Cool? Your readership there. That's great.
Absolutely. Every now and then they'll link to a Bleeding Cool story that's got some political connection. So and we get a ton of traffic. So I'll keep doing it.
That's cool. We mentioned the DC anthologies, and I'm really interested in seeing that Pride issue that's coming up. Yeah. And I love the story that you had today about the possibility of JLQ, Justice League Queer,
which was pitched by Andrew Wheeler, a former Bleeding Cool reporter and also former editor-in-chief of Comics Alliance. But that's beside the by. But he also did a column for Bleeding Cool back in the day. He's not a friend. We used to probably like a drinking. Okay, look at the percentage on this thing. There's a whole bunch of drinking people that was kind of a spin-off from the Warren Ellis forum and then became their own forum. And we always used to go drinking like once a month or more at a certain pub. And one of them was Anthony Johnston, and one of them was Kieran Gillen, and one of them was Jamie McKelvey, and others, Alex DeCampi, Jen Greenwald, and others. And it's kind of weird. And also a bunch of people who are fine and haven't gone on to do anything. They've gone on with their lives, and they're just as important to the group. And one of them was Andrew Wheeler before he moved over to Canada. So there's a whole bunch of us that are still entwined in each other's lives, I think. So it's always quite fun to see when someone like that breaks out. And Andrew Wheeler is definitely breaking out right now. DC love him. So we'll see him on some big name books. Might be JLQ, might be something else. He's in that place where he's doing lots of smaller stories for the digital books and the anthologies, which is basically the precursor for him to break out and do something huge.
No, that's great. And truly, I've Philip Johnston earlier commented and stuff. And I'm really happy for Stephanie Phillips and people like that, Erica Schultz, and others that are getting their opportunities now. We're really in this period where, forgive the analogy, everybody, but it's like a snake shedding its skin, where a generation of writers move on and we get a new influx of talent. And as concerned as the people I've been about the big two, I think there's a lot of new, fresh talent that's writing and drawing exceptional stuff.
100%. If I just disappear, I'm going to go back onto the PC and jump over.
All right, or we could wrap up, Rich, whatever you want to do.
Oh, I'm happy to jump. Do you mind if you pause? Can I just pause this and I'll be back in, 20 seconds, something like that.
No problem, buddy. I'll take you out of the screen and you do your thing. And in the meantime, I'll talk to everybody else. And, old school says Bleeding Cool's reputation as a muckraker exploitive is vastly overrated. I think you have to depend on the subject being discussed, because I can tell you, having the relationships I have with various publishers and other content people, that they're not always happy with Bleeding Cool. And sometimes they do wish that they would be left to their own devices to release information on their own timetable. And that's why I personally have no problem with it when it comes to Word Balloon and they want me to wait. All right, Rich is back. Hang on. There he is.
I just got to turn on. I just realized I'm muted. There we go.
You're on.
Okay, can you see me?
I can see you and hear you.
Excellent. Lovely.
Absolutely, man. No, so yeah, all right, now let's see. What else was I going to discuss with you?
I don't think I'm on the big screen. I may not be on the big screen.
Oh, you are.
Okay, good.
Oh no, you're part of the picture. We can see it. Let everyone confirm that everyone can see Rich, but I know I've got him on here right now.
Fantastic.
And I see him, and it's part of we're cool. All right.
Do I look different because this is a different camera? Do I look suddenly strange or mysterious? Or...
It's not that bad. No, it's a different angle slightly, but it's all good. I saw the story today about Leonard Nimoy's daughter and how she's regarding Ethan Peck and also just the Shatner relationship with the family. I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, I don't know, Rich, are you a Star Trek person?
A little bit. We did. I certainly watched it a bit. I didn't have it. It wasn't on the TV as much as it would have been in the States. But certainly, I'd watched it certainly. But we had Doctor Who, and that was clearly much better. So and that was going on. So through the 70s and the early 80s, we had Doctor Who when it was just repeats of Star Trek, and then you got Star Trek Next Generation, and I thought that was awful until I started thinking it was the best thing ever. But that took a few years in, and then of course you fall in love with Deep Space Nine and Voyager as well. And
Deep Space.
And I love Lower Decks, and I love Discovery and all this kind of stuff. So I've become much more.
You love Discovery? Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. It's Star Trek. I love it. It's really easy to love. So all this kind of stuff I think is great. So I will. Them.
I don't consider myself a troll, but I find myself very disappointed. I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
In the new Star Trek product, purely from a plot and character writing standpoint.
Did you watch the original series again with that viewpoint in mind?
Yeah, but Rich, that was the 60s, I mean, and also, frankly, they had a lot of great sci-fi writers writing good concepts, and to put all your eggs in one basket, as new Star Trek has, and they're not alone. A lot of TV shows do this. One story a season. You are subject to that much more complaints, because I can imagine if we had one season of the original series and the Children Shall Lead, one of the worst original series episodes, and I can name easily 20 more that absolutely were horrible. But having done 70 or so of the original series, there's a lot of classics. Certainly the 7 seasons that the subsequent sequel shows had, and even the 4 seasons of Enterprise, again, spread it out. And also, it seemed to
Enterprise.
me...
No, I can't go with Enterprise.
Well, and I respect that. You're not... Again, it had there's a reason why it only went 4 seasons. I understand. But New Trek, it's just... I find it highly derivative of other sci-fi, which really disappoints me.
Okay. How derivative has Star Trek always been? Wasn't it always like it was described as a wagon to the stars? It was Wild West frontier stuff.
Yeah, but it wasn't as specific, I would say, as New Trek is getting. Now, there certainly were exceptions, like the first time we see the Romulans essentially is a redo of a great submarine movie, Run Silent, Run Deep, with Burt Lancaster and Clark Gable. Great movie, classic American film. Robert Wise, ironically, directed that and also later directed Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Lots of sci-fi steals. Lots of sci-fi is X in space, time after time. And if I look at things like, some of my favorite science fiction in comics and things like 2000 AD, so much stealing stuff from everywhere. Anything that's not tied down, even a few things that are. Let's grab it, put a helmet on it, and a big gun in its hand. So that's hilarious. Is a magpie.
You'll be fast asleep, but I'm doing a rewatch of The Outer Limits with Gabriel Hardman.
Gotcha.
And tonight we're discussing the Harlan Ellison episode Soldier, first episode of the 2nd season. Yeah. And obviously it's ties to the Terminator or Hulk. And it's so funny. So I've already got images lined up to show. And then goddamn, literally from that Hulk episode, the first issue, that first splash page, it absolutely is a lift from this Outer Limits episode in terms of what the spaceman is wearing and even the ray gun that he's holding. Bill Mantlo and
Bill Mantlo was the biggest magpie. Anything? That's the whole issue. Right now we've got the new Monster book by Windsor Smith coming out as this 300-page not a Hulk story. We all know that was originally a story that Bill Mantlo just ripped off the original artwork pages for Hulk, leaving Windsor Smith going, "What's going on? This book isn't finished yet, and yet you've done a version of it in the Hulk comic book." So yeah, you're right. No, that's Bill did. Bill, the thing is, to be honest, at the time, no one really cared. No one really cared that much, and it was fine. It was kids' fiction. It wasn't considered seriously, so why not rip off something and put it in a?
Well, the other thing about New Trek that I would say is their story logic doesn't make sense. They develop ideas early on.
Again,
I disagree, man.
I know. I think you're seeing some of that earlier stuff with rose-tinted glasses.
I'll take the comment, but I don't know. And again, it's one thing to do 700 different stories and have the occasional, thing that looks familiar. There's that great Patrick Stewart episode of Next Generation where he's left alone on the ship and they've got the thieves, and it's Die Hard on the Enterprise. There's no question it's Die Hard on the Enterprise. But
they're both balls
doing Die Hard on the Enterprise. And also, good Lord, I'm sorry. And both in the cases of Discovery and Picard in particular, I hate the fact that Discovery is all about Michael Burnham. No one else on that ship is capable of solving a problem. And that's their editorial choice.
I'd argue that was generally true of Kirk as well.
Again, since Kirk, I do think the other shows got smart. Halfway, really, 3rd season of Next Generation, Michael Pillard, one of the co-producers, is like, instead of it just always being about the planet, let's have B stories where this is a Worf episode, this is a Data episode, And then when we got to know the whole crew, because you're right. I mean, with rare exception, it was either Kirk or Spock. And as much as we love the bridge crew and stuff, all they had to do was, all right, aiming phasers, fire, whatever.
This thing is, for Discovery, I really like Michael Burnham episodes, which is all they are, and I'm happy with that. So I'm good. But I mean, again, for stealing, I mean, look at something like Doctor Who. That was blatant in anything they could. To be honest, a lot of that time was, we need some sets. BBC has got other sets for other shows. Well, let's use their sets. So suddenly everything is grabbing whatever they can. There's a Sherlock Holmes thing. Right, we'll grab that and use it for the Talons of Wen Chang, that kind of stuff.
I love that episode.
And
absolutely.
You might as well keep the same plot. So there's a lot of that stuff they did. Doctor Who again.
Lightfoot, absolutely. They're Jago and Lightfoot, the British investigators that are in that episode. Oh my God, no man! And I appreciated the inventiveness of Doctor Who to have such a shoestring budget and come up with amazing stories. So, and also even the television run of Hitchhiker's Guide, as clunky as it looks, it's like, and I know it was originally a radio show.
Have you heard the radio?
What's that?
Have you heard the radio?
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Just checking.
And the subsequent sequels they made, 10 and 15 years ago. Great stuff. Absolutely. Oh my God, no. Yeah, I'm so bummed that I never. Douglas Adams actually came to the town I was living in and made an appearance at a bookstore, and I missed it, and I'm still kicking myself 30 years later.
I did get to meet him a couple of times, and it was always fantastic. So yeah, he's big loss.
Yeah, I'd love very young. Yeah, absolutely, and it's a shame. Absolutely. All right, there's a downer.
That's all right.
But no, and dude, I'm going back to Tom Baker. That's what was my discovery of Doctor Who in the 70s. Thank God, got to watch the Pertwee episodes pretty fast after that as well. And truly now love the entire franchise. Although I have to admit, again, love the idea of a woman being Doctor Who. The execution, it drives me insane. I think
sometimes I've always found that true of Doctor Who, but I would say things like the Revenge of the Jadoon, the Jadoon episode, everything that span off from that in the most recent series, I thought was some of Doctor Who at its absolute finest. The one with the Jadoon return and then you get Joe, the other Doctor returning, and then the whole conspiracy stuff going on. I was well up for all the Time Lords and the pre-Time Lords, all the stuff in the Dark Age. I was well up for that. So,
all right. And again, everybody, I consider myself incredibly liberal, but when they decided to redo the Doctor's origin, and she was a woman originally.
They always do. Originally back in the day, Time Lords didn't exist when Doctor Who started. Gallifrey didn't exist. The regenerations didn't exist. When he first regenerated, he didn't regenerate. He rejuvenated. So all he did was get younger. And it was meant to be that Patrick Troughton was his younger self.
Interesting.
It wasn't meant to be a regeneration. All this stuff gets added to the canon later. So they're always doing this. They're constantly changing who and what the Doctor is. And I would argue Timeless Children, very specifically, restores the mystery of the Doctor. Because at the beginning, we had no idea who he was, where he came from, or what he was doing. And now we have no idea who she is, where she's from, or what she was doing in the first place. We have no idea what her original form even was. We have no clue. The Doctor is a mystery again. Doctor Who, name's in the title. The question is there. And I'm very happy with that.
That's good. One thing I will say about the latest Doctor Who that I think they handled better back in the 80s when Peter Davison had 3 companions at the same time.
I agree.
I do think that it diminishes the Doctor having to serve all the other companions in the way they serve them now as far as story goes.
I think that's fair. Well, we got a couple for the next series. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. And by the way, you can see a lot of other returning kind of characters and races and stuff from a few of the leaked shots that have come out from the filming thing. So you'll see a few old favorites there as well. And
that doesn't surprise me because it seems like much like Star Trek, and you've got a better handle of it being in the UK and everything. There really is a divided audience that is not happy with the current iteration of Doctor Who.
There's always an iteration of the audience that is not happy with Doctor Who, and that's been the case since the first year. There's always people, right from the beginning, people, oh, we don't like this. This isn't proper science fiction, or this isn't proper Doctor Who. And I remember when Peter Davison was the new Doctor, and the amount of people saying, that's terrible, he's far too young. You can't take that. My dad, for the first time, when Peter Davison was the Doctor, he wouldn't watch it because for the first time the Doctor was younger than him. And that's not right. So and I actually had that myself when Matt Smith became the Doctor. It's kind of like, yeah, but he's younger than me for the first time. I don't think I can do that. And of course, it was great. But people, every single time we get a new Doctor, all the fandom say, but that's not the Doctor, for a good little while, and then the moment they go, everyone goes, oh, but we prefer the last Doctor. Whoever this next person is, that's not the Doctor. This person is. And you watch the second they talk about whenever she leaves and goes on to something else, you will get a huge bunch of fandom going, oh no, I can't accept this Doctor. No, that's the best Doctor. The last one is always the one that's my Doctor. And that will always happen. Because what happens is you get a new stranger person who's playing the Doctor, and then a few episodes in, suddenly that person is the Doctor. And it's just the way it works. Again.
I really do. I like Jodie Whittaker's character. And I like the way she plays the Doctor, and I really do. I just wish
the most recent one, I thought that was banging.
The New Year's episode.
Yeah, I thought that was absolute. I was giddy as all, etc.
Well, but isn't right now the displeasure that the British audience? It seems like it's affecting the ratings, maybe more so than when they were.
Okay, no, not at all. That is absolutely true. Okay, the rating. Okay, this is what always happens every single time it happens, and it has been happening for a decade.
Okay,
it's that they release the overnight ratings, and they are always less than like a year ago, which had the combined ratings.
Right.
And the tabloids will go, oh look, it's only got 4 million instead of 6 million. Clearly, Doctor Who's on the loose. And then a couple of weeks later, they add all the viewings from the iPlayer and stuff like that. And suddenly it's back up at 6 million again. And that's exactly what happened this time. The ratings are not down. Viewing figures are not down. Haven't been for 5-6 years, haven't been down.
Okay.
It's just that always people look at the overnights and they compare them to the previous one, which had all the viewers counted. It happened with the New Year's Day one. It was, oh, look, the numbers are down again. I mean, no. They're exactly the same overnights as they were last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that.
Interesting.
It's one of those. It's one of those things that always annoys me when people do that, and occasionally I try and point it out. Very rarely, but if you go back and look at those numbers, the combined numbers, they're not down at all. But that's not the big thing because it's the BBC, and that's not how the BBC works. BBC doesn't just look at the numbers because that makes no difference. They're not doing advertising. They're not earning money from how many people watch.
Well, but
they don't. They do a thing called the appreciation index, which is what they do. They measure a whole bunch of people, and they say, well, how much did you like that show? How much? If you watch that show, how much did you like it? And then you get a score out of 100. And if it's over 80, that's great. And that's what they judge stuff on. If stuff is getting over 80 consistently, then it'll get another series.
And Doctor Who is still rating in that 80 plus. Okay.
Absolutely.
By the way, loved your story. Was it yesterday about Idris Elba and Luther not being black enough?
Well, that's one very specific person. That's a specific person who works at the BBC who's just talking about, and I think got a fair point in that the character of Idris, written by a white guy, wasn't written for a black guy. Cast Idris, and so you have maybe a worldview of this character that might not be as reflective. So there is something in that. But also, I talked to all sorts of people, and I know a friend of mine's a black guy called Joseph, is a writer, and he was telling me, "But no, that's my life. I don't have a whole bunch of black friends. I'm a geeky black guy who likes all this kind of stuff, and I really related to Idris because I really related to the Luther character because that reflected me. So who knows? There's going to be more awareness, and I reckon if they were doing Luther now, you'd see a bit more of that in his social circle. Yeah.
Sure.
But interesting. But it's where it is. So if they want more Luther, they're
right. I'm sure we'll see more. I'm sure we'll see Black Friends and more of
last year, my favorite drama of all was McKenna Cole's "I May Destroy You," which I don't know if you saw it at all. I know it was on HBO.
Tell me.
I call it. I consider it the Watchmen of television in the way that the Watchmen TV series wasn't. It totally deconstructed television drama. It created incredible images and viewing experiences. It incredibly complex. So you have to sympathize with some horrible people, and people who you feel you're meant to. The show deliberately goes out of their way to make you alienated towards some of the lead characters who you have previously liked. It forces you to go into different ways, and then it breaks narrative structure. And it's a 12-part thing, and it's available on HBO in the States, I know. Honestly, if you get a chance, the best television show I have seen in decades, probably something like The Singing Detective. It's that big a change.
Oh my God, I love the Michael Gambon Singing Detective. Absolutely, man. You know, it's funny having Acorn and BritBox. I went through Rumpole of the Bailey again because I adore Leo McCartney. Yeah. Such a great show.
Good show.
And I'm almost done rewatching I, Claudius because I loved I, Claudius so much.
Do you have HBO Max?
I do.
Have you seen Ghosts?
I have not. Tell me.
Okay, British sitcom from the cast who did a show called Horrible Histories, which was a great kids horrible history sketch show, which won loads of awards. But Ghosts is a sitcom set in a old house which has been inherited by a couple, and it's all the people who are now ghosts who she can now see in this house going back to the cavemen days. And since you've got people from the plague years, you've got people who are like burnt as witches, and you've got like people from World War II, you've got someone from the 80s, you've got a politician from the 90s who died there of self-asphyxiation in a sexual game, and who's constantly, he is a ghost without any trousers, any pants for the whole show. It's hilarious. It's made by one of the best current comedy troupes in Britain, the Horrible Histories guys. And it's there waiting for you. There's a few things. I've got all these things. Peacock and HBO Max have got some. They've got a whole bunch of like some of the British shows.
British imports. Yes,
they haven't bothered telling anyone they've got.
Right.
Peacock has got Noughts and Crosses, which is an incredible drama. Came up here last year, which is based on a series of books by Marjorie Blackman, which is basically a what if Africa colonized Europe.
And that's great. I bet that's amazing. Yeah.
It plays out a London that just looks really, really different. Everything in terms of sculpture and architecture, clothing and design. And you do have an incredibly racist society just flipped the other way, because it's the idea of this is human nature to do this to people.
Of course, yes. No, that sounds amazing. Yeah.
It was based on a bunch of books about kids at school, but for the TV show they've just aged every character by about 5 years. So they're all adults, and then so it just like amps up the tension even more. But again, it's a wonderful show. Peacock have it, so
good to hear. Yeah, I've got Peacock. God damn, Rich,
a lot of things hidden.
I hang on to cable mostly for another great British, much more appreciation for this sport than here in the States. Boxing. I love boxing. I've loved boxing since I was a small child, and that's why I hang on to cable. So,
is that bigger in the UK than in America? Is that not big in America? I always thought it was.
Well, it's so weird because of the gambling and the like people want to fight in Vegas around the world globally. That is still the jewel in the crown in terms of location. But the reality is, no, they don't. I mean, thank God an interesting heavyweight champion like Tyson Fury has presented himself. I was a huge fan of Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko, the brothers, as heavyweight fighters, but they cleaned out the division and they just were so cautious that, just by small cuts, interest in boxing has diminished. But my point was bringing it up is, that said, that's one of the few reasons why I hang on to cable. But I have literally like 10 streaming accounts because I can't get enough of these new shows, and the real dynamic television is happening on these streamers. There are a few exceptions, like The Good Place that was on our terrestrial NBC, one of the original 4 networks, and was brilliant. And thank God they knew what they had. So they're like, if you only have 11 episodes a season, we're fine with that. You don't have to, that's my complaint about the CW shows. all the DC television, they're still using that old model of, no, we need 20 episodes. And it's like, you don't have 20 stories. Cut it back. Please cut it back.
No, I get that. I definitely feel that way. Yes. I'm with you on that. The thing is, we never had that problem because our shows, apart from the soaps, never had that many episodes, and they were mostly written by one or two people. So it had a different kind of feel and focus.
Well, Life on Mars, I was on it like from the moment that it had premiered and was able to watch. I forget where in America I was able to watch it, but I bought the DVDs and listening to the creators going into season 2 saying, hey, we can't be Quantum Leap. This guy's in a coma. It can only be even 6 months in a coma is stretching it. He'd be dead. He'd be brain dead. And so I really appreciated that so much about Life on Mars and that sort of attitude. And literally, man, when I started doing Word Balloon and I'd get the opportunity to talk to American screenwriters and television writers and producers, I'm like, when are we going to go to that British model of, hey, we got 6 episodes and it's a great season. That's it.
Well, you kind of have now. I mean, that's much more. Certainly, maybe not 6, but certainly like 10 13. Or 11. That's much more of a thing.
10 to 13. Yeah.
And they're much, and also showrunners are much more. It's much more being written by. There's one person in control of it more in the way that they may not have been in the past. So you're getting more consistency and more authorial vision that maybe you used to have. So there are different. I think we're learning from each other. The one thing that I think money left on the table for America is the British format, which exists because it's cheap and it's based on all the old Victorian parlour games of 100 years ago. It's the panel show. Are you aware of panel shows? Just get a bunch of comedians and a generalised topic, put them on 2 tables with someone monitoring them, and just let them go at it. Don't make it a game show. I mean, whenever I've seen it, it's important who wins and who loses. And the entire point of the British panel shows is it's not important who wins or who loses. Everyone's just having a good time.
Right.
And every time I've seen America do it, it's always been a competitive thing. That like after that at midnight and things like that, it's just like, stop doing that and just let people be funny.
I hated that.
And clever. And it's cheap. It's so cheap to make.
100%.
Spend the money on the talent. You record it in a couple of hours, and you've got a show. And it's all based on we've been doing it in the radio for years. Do you know a show called Just a Minute at all?
No, tell me about Just a Minute, because I know the old Cleese panel show. Was it I'm Sorry, I'll read.
I haven't a clue.
What is it?
I say, I'm sorry I read that again, and I'm sorry I haven't a clue. Well, I'm sorry I haven't a clue is a panel show, but it's like a parody of a panel show. But Just a Minute it's run for over 50 years now. I mean, for most of those 50 years, it had one host who sadly died last year. But the idea was we get people on, and the game is you have to speak for 60 seconds on a topic we give you right now, random topic, without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. So you can't say the same word twice, you can't talk about anything else, and you have to keep going for 60 seconds. It's incredibly hard to do, and it's absolutely hilarious because they get comedians on, loads of comedians who you like, and if you ever want to get into it, well, you've kind of got 50 years worth to dive into if you wish.
Are they what are they on the BBC? One of the
It's BBC Radio 4. They've tried TV.
Oh, it is on Radio 4. Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, you'll be able to find it on the Radio 4 on the BBC Radio iPlayer, which you need to get into and dive into and find more stuff because there's
Rich.
Just a minute. You usually have people like Stephen Fry and Paul Merton and Julian Clary and Sue Perkins and all sorts of people just doing it, and it is that it rewards being erudite and being funny and being able to just riff. It's all improvised. I thoroughly recommend it.
Stephen Fry has been a long comedy hero of mine.
There you go.
God, he came to the States and did a sit down when Craig Ferguson still had his late night American show. Oh my God. And it was great because they just had a natural conversation, kind of what I try to do here at Word Balloon on a much smaller scale. But that is truly like my ambition, generally speaking, with my show, hence this conversation. I mean, it's just, I love Stephen Fry. He's amazing. And I do love those shows. I even like the competitive ones like Mastermind. And, that's
a game show more than
I understand. No. And you're talking more just general
panel shows.
discussion.
Have I got news for you? 8
Right.
out of 10 cats. Things like that. Mock the week. These are stuff which is just there to be giving people a reason, a way to be very, very funny and be very and to do it on the spot. So it's
and the strength of radio in the UK.
Yeah,
I am genuinely so envious of, because American radio was like that for a very long time until the 60s.
Yes.
And that's when they changed and became more music and information, news bulletins and music, rather than panel shows and variety comedy and great
Radio 4
drama.
especially is broadcasting in the widest sense of the term. I do listen to a lot of Radio 4, especially when I'm working away. But and honestly, it says some of the best sitcoms, some of the best TV sitcoms and comedy shows started there. All sorts of things, but also some of them just stay there because that's the natural home. Yeah,
no, I'm with you, and even and the dramas too, the play of the week or the afternoon play and Saturday play.
There's a lot of drama.
There's so much good stuff.
There's something there's a show called Pilgrim, which is basically kind of like John Constantine in the 16th century. There's shows like that, which is just amazing stuff. There's some great fantasies, science fiction stuff, as well. And I definitely I do try and push Radio 4 on some people every now and then. Because it's free, globally streaming, so it's without any geo-blocking around the world.
Well, 10 or so years ago, when Chain Reaction was happening, that talk show. I'm so glad you threw up a flag and said, "Hey, everybody." Brian Eno and Alan Moore are having a conversation, or Stuart Lee and Alan Moore. It's like
they did them both. I went to both recordings of those. That was great.
I remember you reporting that, and that. Oh my God, to be in the room for both of those conversations must have been amazing.
They did cut a few bits, but they didn't cut a lot. But yes, it was quite a thing.
Well, hearing Brian Eno break into a Peter Cook, Dudley Moore, Derek and Clyde, it's like, are you kidding? I mean, that is just like. It's like that's amazing.
It's weird because we look at these different. Here's one thing, because it's very easy to kind of conflate American and British cultures together because there's so much crossover, but also there's some stuff that just never crosses over from both sides. And things like Saturday Night Live never aired in the UK, or if it does, on some obscure channel down who's got the rights from a series from like 3 years ago. Also, all the chat shows, all the late night chat shows, they don't air in the UK. So we've never seen Letterman. We don't see all these people. We don't see Colbert. All the things who become such a cultural point of America. We never get them at all. Which means when we go and see a film like The Shining, when Jack Nicholson bursts through the door and goes, "Here's Johnny," we think that's what it's from. We think "Here's Johnny" is from The Shining because we've never seen Johnny Carson.
I understand.
And there's a whole bunch of stuff.
I'm glad I discovered, and conversely, I'm glad I discovered Michael Parkinson when BBC America was rerunning him, and thank God for YouTube. He was a great host. He was an amazing.
Tell me you saw the Rod Hull and Emu one.
Who?
Rod Hull and Emu. I think they were in a one American series at one point, but it was a guy who had a puppet emu, mostly in the 70s and 80s, and the puppet was incredibly violent.
Okay.
And he's basically interviewing him, and then the emu attacks Michael Parkinson, knocks him off the chair, spins him around all the time while Rod Hull is being very apologetic and trying to pull it back. And you just see the guy has no idea what to do now. I would find that on YouTube. It is one of the funniest things I could ever watch. But
my God. Well, I mean, you heard my poor Michael Caine imitation when he was on there and talking about how there are satellite navigation apps that someone is imitating him, and you gotta make a right turn there, and all that. Hilarious. God, every time Billy Connolly would come on, ridiculously fun.
I mean, again, such an amazing cultural figure over here as well. I mean, I know he's done some stuff in the States as well. He does some sitcoms and shows.
Oh yeah. Oh no, we're hip to him. I'm so great. I mean, he was amazing. I love Bill, and I'm so goddamn. I know he's still alive, but I know he's got Alzheimer's, and it's so tragic.
Indeed.
He made a great Dustin Hoffman movie that Hoffman directed that takes place at a retirement home, and I think it was called Encore or something like that. Maggie Smith was in it as well. Such a great movie.
Yes.
And truly, again, like that Cruise of the Gods, I really admire that British media is still able to make these small movies that, as I noticed with Cruise of the Gods, it was a TV movie.
Yeah.
And it was like, totally. Oh my God, we get the shittiest TV. Well, now with streaming, we get better ones. But when the networks were doing it, it was so rare to get an actually great TV movie for decades. And you guys, it rolls off your guys' backs.
Well, it's just another thing that happens. You know what I mean? Right now in Britain, everyone is obsessed with a new season of Line of Duty. Has that come over your way?
I'm aware of it.
All right. If you ask Alexa who is H, she will tell you. There were questions in Prime Minister's Question Time this week, and the leader of the opposition starts to bring up Line of Duty references, and Boris Johnson whacks them right back with his own. Everyone is watching this, and everybody's gripped, and we are all just freaking out about all the different twists and turns, and will someone die? It's quite entertaining to watch. To some degree, it's more entertaining to watch the reaction than the actual show itself. But yeah, that is quite. I'm just thinking. I've been having to find stuff to fill the gaps between the episodes because I need that tension. So I'll be watching. I need to find something else that'll give me that tension to get me through the week to the next one. But yeah, that is in Britain. That is the thing that everyone is obsessing about.
That's the show right now.
I mean, I tell you this, you don't need to have lockdown policies when that's on because everyone's at home and everyone's watching it because heaven forfend you get spoiled on Twitter or Facebook as a result. You can't. It can't be done.
That's amazing. No, I understand. And again, I appreciate the list of watching that you've provided. I think in these 2 hours. All right, I get. We should probably wrap up, Rich, because again,
we've reached the 2 hour point. It's true enough. Yes,
yeah, no. Rich, this has been.
But I will throw at you Yonderland, which is from the Horrible History show guys from a few years ago, which is a fantasy show with Jim Henson style puppets.
Oh wow!
It's incredibly, very funny, very sarcastic, and I've never ever seen a kids puppet show suddenly break out into a Kraftwerk parody for a good 2.5 minutes. Yonderland is worth tracking us down as well. There's a whole bunch of this stuff that needs to be seen by more people and possibly by Americans. So then they'll make their own versions of it, and we can all say how terrible it is. By the way, I mentioned Ghosts. They're making an American version of Ghosts. We know it's going to be awful. Well, but, at least the original creators will get some money. So that's nice.
God, when so we have Friends here. Moffat makes Coupling, which was a blast, and then at least we liked it. And then when they try to do American Coupling, it's like, fuck you. It's called Friends. They beat you to it. What are you doing? And also the other one like that.
However, there was stuff in I would say in Coupling, which was basically he was trying out for some of his more complicated Doctor Who plots. do you remember the one where had mistaking the theme tune of Madame Butterfly from the theme tune of Spider-Man?
No, but that's fantastic.
It's an episode that ate its own tail. I could never see where it started. He wrote this thing that just like became like a Mobius loop of writing. There's some stuff in there, and Friends never made me question my own reality like Coupling did. So yeah, there are some bits and pieces. But if you ever get a chance, find the American pilot to the IT Crowd.
Oh my God, I've never seen that. Jesus Christ, I can only imagine.
Richard Ayoade is in it, but it's also, I can't remember his name, the lead, the good-looking lead guy from Community.
Oh, Joel McHale.
There we go. He plays Roy. So you get a good-looking, buff, chiseled Roy.
Yeah, that's not good.
Roy.
No, yeah.
What if Roy was a good-looking fellow? I mean, that's what the IT Crowd American version was, and it's just so strange to watch.
I bet it is. Oh my God, I have to look for that. That's hilarious. No, man. I love British comedy. I love learning these new actors too. Like I said, when I first saw Rob Wright.
Do you know Victoria Wood at all?
Probably.
She sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but she had quite young. But she had a great sketch show and sitcom history, and she did a Christmas one-off called Victoria Wood with All the Trimmings, which is possibly the most hilarious thing I have ever seen. It had Richard E. Grant in it. It had, name's gone, Die Hard guy. Die Hard Harry Potter. Alan Rickman in it. And a bunch, Roger Moore in it, all playing amazingly weird versions of themselves and parodying British television for an hour and films. I would, if you can find Victoria Wood with all the trimmings, you will have a very good evening.
I've got her Wikipedia page loaded, so I will look for with all the trimmings. Again,
I can keep doing this. It's what I do, isn't it? Really.
Well, again, this is, and that's why I said we're going to be talking about nerd culture post COVID and where we are right now. And I'm glad that these tangents are just as valid as the comic book stuff we've discussed.
Well, I'm discovering because of the things like TikTok and YouTube, kind of grabbing these things and putting them to different audiences, we are now being exposed to more stuff from our different cultures, but also elsewhere. And also the fact that Netflix is putting on stuff globally. I would never have seen Deep or Sound without Netflix. And that has become one of my favorite shows. I'm so happy that we're getting a 5th series in a movie. And I would never have watched that because it's a French show and it wouldn't be aired here. And it's become one of my favorite TV shows going. Call My Agent, I think it's in the States. But if you've never seen that, it's on Netflix and it is so good. It's about actors and producers, and you won't get we won't get half the jokes, but the jokes that we do get are all golden.
Well, and again, it's great to learn kind of the God. I've been into Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister.
Yeah, we go.
Having only known I forget his name now, but the actor that was in Madness of King George.
That's awful. Yeah.
Yes, and my God,
do you know what? He was also
comedy. Was
the bad guy in Demolition Man?
I'm sorry.
He started alongside Sylvester Stallone in Demolition Man.
Of course, yes, indeed.
Which might have been done for the money. Let's be fair, but yeah, he was. His stuff as Sir Humphrey is some of that stuff was like, how do you learn the lines? How do you perform it without breaking up? Yeah,
absolutely. Oh God, yeah. Well, that's the thing, man, and it's and it was fun to learn that the Larry Sanders Show, Shandling Show, became such a cult favorite over there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we haven't really had a lot of big American shows that do well. Even things like Friends was never overly popular. It had our audience, but it wasn't the biggest audience, and that's never really happened to American shows. Maybe things like Dallas and Dynasty back in the day, possibly. But aside from that, you've never had it's always the films have done very well. But the TV shows generally not so much. You get more cult audiences, so we have to track down and follow things like Seinfeld, which again the Larry Sanders Show. So you really were good at trying to find them and track them down and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely how it got kind of a cult audience. But yeah, the Larry Sanders Show, Guy Shandling, absolutely genius to see, and now of course a Marvel character. So
that's right, absolutely the Senator, Hail Hydra.
But it is weird. We talk about things like Saturday Night Live. Never got over here, but we do get the films that are based on the sketches. So things like Blues Brothers and Wayne's World, they're huge, but we only think of them as films. We don't know generally, but most people don't know the television origins of those kind of characters. So they come to us fully formed in that way.
One of the last conversations I think I had with Mark Miller was he was reminding me that the 70s Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man TV show was presented as a film overseas.
That did happen. Battlestar Galactica, the original one, was put out as a film to basically try and get us some of the Star Wars money. So yeah, that absolutely happened. Yep. But again, The Trip, that was a TV show here.
Yes, I've watched the episodes. Yes.
Oh, there you go. It gets cut together as a film for the States. And I think certainly the way that TV production has amped up a bit more, you could do that all over the place. You really could. There's more stuff out there that could be done that way.
I agree. Rich, we could clearly go another hour, and I don't want to keep you awake. Great conversation as always. Bleedingcool.com, everybody. But you already know that if you're watching Word Balloon, you certainly know Bleeding Cool a lot more than you know Word Balloon. So, but honestly, no, it's always fun talking, and I'm sure we'll check in more sooner than later. I mean, you came on right after the big announcement that DC was moving. That's the last time you and I spoke. So I imagine we're going to see some more shifting of continents as we come out of COVID and whatever the nerd world may look like.
It's weird to see how it's November when this is going to hit big, because that, unlike with DC, Marvel have delayed all these big changes until October, November. I mean, they pulled the Predator comic off the schedules just so they could make a bigger impact when they move over to Penguin. So yeah, it's interesting to see how that's all going to change. But there are going to be changes. Some actually, do you know what? If you've got 2 minutes,
sure, please.
Impact is that Diamond has been acting like a bank for the comic book industry all through COVID, because lots of retailers haven't had to pay all the money they've owed Diamond, because Diamond basically just subbed it for a long period. If Diamond collapses or goes away, all those debts are going to be called in, so that's an issue. Also, on the other side, lots of publishers will be owed money by Diamonds because that's the natural way the cash flow goes. The stuff comes in, and if Diamond goes away, they're not going to have access to that cash either. So you could see problems for both retailers and publishers, especially if not Marvel and DC, and probably not some of the bigger stores, but there may be some big impacts that could happen yet. We have to see. We don't know yet.
Gary made that same observation about Diamond, and even looking back in the 90s, where it was so friendly between stores and Diamond that, hey, I'm having a rough month. Can I put off paying you until next month? Absolutely. And good luck in today's atmosphere. And like you said, man, it's a house of cards. It really is. And dominoes will fall if this status quo that we've enjoyed for the last 40 years or so, or I guess 50 years if you want to go back to the 70s. If it all collapses like that, But
at least we know that Frank Miller is the new Rorschach, and we can
That's hilarious. I got to read that. Well, and I just had Tom on last month, so I always want to give him some breathing room before I have him back. Tom is great that way. Tom's like, oh yeah, I'll talk. It's like, hey Tom, we're playing trivia. Oh, okay. And I'm so glad because he's a great guy, and he's an interesting guy.
So. It's one of those weird things because he was like an intern at Marvel working with Chris Claremont. Chris seems to have no memory of Tom whatsoever. I think that's hilarious.
I think it's hilarious as well. I also think it's very consistent with Chris Claremont. So, I finally had him on at the end of last year when they made that omnibus or that masterwork X-Men collection that they just put out, or at the beginning of this year. And I'm glad because I really was hesitant, not being the biggest X-Men fan, and also knowing Chris's reputation and also experiencing Chris's reputation firsthand. I'm like, do I want to talk to Chris Claremont? I'm like, yeah, what the hell? Yeah, we had a great conversation. And he was great.
He's always good. He's always good value, especially when he starts to pretend he's British again. That's always great.
Much like Madonna when she married Guy Ritchie. It's like, where did that come from?
Because Chris was born here, grew up here, kind of stuff, but he still thinks he's English, he's British. He'll always do the accent. And it's kind of like, oh, no, seriously.
That's awesome. That's hilarious, man. See, I can't get rid of my Chicago. It's part of who I am. So
absolutely, I'm not changing my accent for anyone.
Dude, hilarious. Great conversation. Thank you.
Take care.
Come back. So everybody, thanks for watching. Later tonight, we're gonna do To the Outer Limits. Rich is gonna be fast asleep or just waking up.
So tired.
One of the two. But we're talking about a soldier.
I was vaccinated today. I'm a bit tardy.
Oh, by all means, man. No, relax. You deserve it, definitely. And congratulations on getting the vaccine.
But also, I was watching bad movies on Netflix till 4 in the morning last night. And I cycled 12 miles a day. So, yeah.
Oh, hey, that's awesome. Very good, man. There you go. Well, can't wait for this conversation tonight. We're talking about Harlan Ellison's Soldier, An Amazing Outer Limits. It's on Daily Motion. So if you've never seen it, go to Daily Motion and look up the Outer Limits Soldier. You can watch it and prep for this conversation because it's really, it's the tip of the iceberg just discussing Ellison's problems with the Terminator producers and James Cameron and getting that settled. And like we said, the Marvel Hulk issue that clearly was a lift of Soldier. It's going to be a fun discussion. So look forward to that later tonight. But until then, thanks you very much, Rich Johnston. And as always, everybody,